Cool. What's up, everybody? Can you guys hear me? Everyone can hear me fine?
We
All
can,
right,
we can.
cool.
We can
Hello,
indeed.
hello.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? Gotham Paladin here. We're finally doing a post-launch week stream discussion of Batman Arkham Shadow. I am joined by a lot of cool people today. We got the studio leads. We have Ryan Darcy here on the screen. You can say hi. Hello, sir.
What's up, all? Hey,
Hello,
design
hello.
director on Arkham Shadow.
Awesome. I got Ryan Payne here. I don't know where. There's Ryan Payne right there. You introduce yourself, Ryan.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, this is Ryan Payton. I was muted. Rookie move. Well, happy to be here.
Cool. Hello, hello. And they also got also other amazing YouTubers too. So let's go in order here. We got Doomblazer,
Hello.
Clown Puncher.
Howdy do.
We also got that boy Aqua,
Hi.
and we also got Kaynard.
Hey.
And we also have the Arkham channel. And Arkham channel will be communicating via typing. And Caboose will also be here soon. He said he'll be here in like 5. So do you guys hear an echo? Is that just me?
No.
Okay, that's me. Cool. Yeah, cool. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so we're here and we're going to talk about Batman Arkham Shadow. It's going to be a spoiler discussion. We'll also be answering your questions along the way. We'll probably play by ear. I'll write down questions that I see. But yeah, I'll have them on the screen talking and also play gameplay in the background as well about the game. But it will be a spoiler discussion. So, yeah,
Get out if you don't want any.
exactly.
Get out if you don't want any.
Yeah, man. So, yeah, I guess to start, I mean, I don't know if, Ryan, if you had anything you wanted to start with. I know you like to lead in these conversations. If not, I had things that I wanted to talk about. But, yeah, we just play it by ear kind of thing.
Well, as my colleague here, Ryan Darcy, knows, oh yeah, I like to take over on a lot of fronts, right? But this is your guys' show. We're here as honored guests, and we're just really happy to be here. And I actually love to hear what Ryan Darcy has to say about this too, because we haven't talked about this in the last day or two. But we were at our launch party on Tuesday, and before we kind of parted ways with, we had about 60 people there. It was really fun, and Ryan Darcy and I was talking about just how relieved we are that the reception has been as positive as it has been. We feel really lucky that it seems like the game is resonating with the Arkham community, and yeah, we're also just really thankful for everybody here, that like for everybody here on the stream, representing like who have all these different Arkham or Arkham focused or Arkham related channels. The collaboration that we were able to do with you all was really special too, and helped make the game better. So I just want to kick off by just thanking you all, thanking everybody here who's checking out the stream and your interest in the game, and then I thank my team and Ryan Darcy for their incredible work on the game.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that was one thing, like, the reception for the game has been great, and I'm sure you guys, back home are, like, really, like, happy about that. I'm sure you guys were confident about it, too. Like, like, people were skeptical at first, but I know you told me that, like, once they saw gameplay and all that, that you guys are pretty happy to show that, and you guys are confident that it would get good reception, and it did. It got really good scores, and we all kind of expected that going into the game. So it turned out really good. And you guys just dropped like a bug fix update thing too yesterday as well. So it's like the game's still being updated, and that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just jump into the next topic, but there's like a bunch of questions that are things that I want to talk about, not even like questions, just like things about the game. It is a spoiler discussion, by the way, so I put that on the screen. We're gonna talk about spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, you should probably just kind of leave a like first and then leave. But then yeah, anyway, so one thing I wanted to talk about right away was Rat King. Spoilers again, he is Harvey Dent in the game. That was really interesting, and it also makes a lot of sense. And I kind of wanted to ask, like, what was the decision behind that? Did you guys want to do like a Two-Face story initially, or was there like something behind that story that you guys wanted? I think Rat King, and yeah, before you guys can answer that question, and then I have like things that lead into it. But yeah, was there any kind of like decision behind that you guys were?
Yeah, the whole idea of the Rat King and was an idea that we had. I don't know, Ryan Darcy, from very early on. I want to say within the first few months of development, but truth be told, we didn't know who the Rat King was going to be. We knew that we wanted to have and people are going to scoff at this because you're going to say, "Oh, you're just doing the same thing that Rocksteady did with Arkham Knight," and we were on to you. But look, I'm sympathetic to what Sefton and Jamie and the folks at Rocksteady had to kind of toe that line about. Yeah, Arkham Knight is like this brand new villain, and so, but we really went into this not with the Rat King, not really knowing who the Rat King was going to be. We were just really enthralled by the idea that we were going to have a different villain, right? Somebody who's like fresh and new. We can kind of do something different. And it was also very timed with the themes of the game, the type of adversary that we wanted to have. And so then it was just a big, long process of, working with our partners at Warner Brothers Interactive and DC to, ensure that we're aligned with them. And then our just deep education of the Arkham universe and the history, again, thanks to a lot of you guys' channels, quite frankly. And because we didn't know, like, I feel like we knew 5% of Arkham when we started. And I'd like to think that we've graduated from college after making this game. But yeah, so the truth be told. And then, shout outs to Jared or Cloud Plunger for his video on this that launched, maybe a few weeks back, or right a few weeks before the game launched, really dissecting and kind of just doing like the thought experiment of who the Rat King could be, given all the different parameters that we have as developers and the history of the franchise. And I thought it was really thoughtful. He touched on a lot of the challenges that we had as well. And so, but I was really relieved when I was able to get Clown Puncher's response to the big reveal that even if it wasn't perfect, if it felt like earned to a degree, and I think the team did a really good job. And I just personally I pushed really hard for it to be a story about Harvey and Twoface, and I'll leave with this, and I know it's a long answer, but for me, if I could go and change one thing from the Arkham, like actually it's not even Arkham, the DC universe, right? One thing I find a little bit confusing is that when we talk about Twoface, we talk about him having this kind of split personality, right? It's the Harvey Dent side, and then it's the Twoface side. But I actually look at him as somebody who it's Harvey Dent, and then it's his shadow side. And then the collection of that is Twoface. So if in the subtitles, if I could change one thing, it would be like Harvey Dent plus, whatever they would call that. I think that's more representative of the character in my mind. And so we had a lot of fun exploring what that shadow version of Harvey Dent was going to be.
That's awesome. And like something to lead into as like, yeah, to do a reveal, like a secret villain, like, and you don't know the reveal is really hard to do, like in like a superhero thing. Like Arkham Knight, great game. It was pretty obvious who that character was. For the Rat King, for me, like towards the end of the game, I kind of suspected who it could be. But what you guys did really well was like, you had a bunch of candidates throughout the game where I was like, is it Joe? Is it actually Ratcatcher? Could it be like Bolton, or like it goes with like a bunch of different characters. Like this guy could be Rat King. So I think having it like that, where you make me guess on a bunch of different candidates, was like a really really cool route that I thought was interesting. Because like I said, I think it's hard to do like a secret reveal for like a Batman villain in particular. Like people are going to try to guess, that kind of thing.
Oh, it is. It's really difficult, especially with a very attuned audience, right? I think the Arkham community and Arkham players just like hyper vigilant, they're noticing every single detail. So we did very purposely have a fairly large list of suspects, right? Because we wanted it to be something of surprise. We want to have plenty of Mr. X. I think one of you guys noticed, it might have been Caboose playing, when you get into the last chapter and you go to the commissary, Joe's not there.
Where's Joe?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
and Joe, like, this is a spoiler cast, and also me just kind of lifting the veil on the background of this, but we kind of thought about Joe as Verbal from Usual Suspects. We wanted people that are used to now. The new thing is, I think Usual Suspects, and there's a Japanese show that did this a little bit before Usual Suspects, is that it became kind of common. It's kind of almost a trope now that like the least likely person you would expect to be like the big reveal of the villain, typically is that since then. So we wanted people to think like, oh, the most unassuming character, of course,
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of fun with that because we that was one of our big takeaways, and areas that we felt we could have done better with Iron Man VR. I'm not going to spoil the ending of Iron Man VR, but we felt like the reveal was a little bit too obvious. And we also, but you have to thread that line, because you also don't want it to be so out of left field that it didn't feel earned. And I do, like, I'm never going to say it's like how we did the story of Arkham Shadow is perfect, but I'm extremely proud of the team, like the balance that we were able to kind of achieve there in terms of like the secret and the reveal and earning it.
I'm curious about kind of what, like, for general audiences and people who have like gotten the chance to play now, what their thoughts were on the Rat King reveal. Because like you said, you know, I think for creators like us and for people who've played and like live and breathe and bleed Arkham, like, yeah, there was a lot that we were like, okay, like it looks like this is what we're teeing up to. But I did appreciate towards the end of the game that disappearance of Joe, because it was that one little like shred of doubt that I feel like you need towards the end of the game to just make you question everything. And that's why I'm genuinely curious as to what like general audiences or people out there who've gotten the chance to play Arkham Shadow, like if because of that last minute thing, did it make them completely question who that character could have been, or just in general, like, did they not see it coming because maybe they weren't, you know, as in tune with Batman Arkham as like some of us might be?
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. Like, sometimes people are just hard to please, right? And there's also like bias. Two-Face for me is my favorite villain, so to see that was awesome. So I'm like biased there. But for like general audiences, like, you know, sometimes you're just hard to please with Batman, especially Arkham. Like, that's a thing, you know. It's like, what if the reveal was underwhelming for people? What if it was satisfactory for people? What if they like really exceeded their expectations? For me, I really thought the reveal was well done, considering all the factors you have to put into making a secret villain for Batman. But yeah, I agree with Caboose. I just wanted to add that.
I feel like I'm like Brian Darcy, myself, and the team at Camouflage. I feel like we've, for better or for worse, been elevated into now the realm of now receiving, you know, the critiques of the Arkham community, and I take that as like a good thing, as an honor, because, you know, as we were studying the game, I noticed what you were saying, guys, about how, you know, how critical the community can be, and I'm looking at a game like Arkham Knight, and I'm looking at how many characters and how many storylines and how well executed so much of it is. But I'm also watching videos of people critiquing. It's like, oh, they only went so far with I don't know, like with this character or my favorite character. Like, why did they go further with that? I'm like, do you know how many characters are in this game and how big and this massive scope of it is? It's like, yeah, you can't please everybody. And I actually really do enjoy the discourse, and like seeing, like, I was responding to a message yesterday about how people had wished that we had kind of tied the knot more and kind of fleshed out the conclusion for some characters such as Crane or Harleen or even Lyle Bolton, even to a greater extent. And I'm thinking, okay, yep, we've now entered into that realm of, yeah, we're going to receive a lot of that feedback, and we'll take that, you know, with our next game. Hopefully our next game is another Arkham game. But regardless, I think that, you take the good with the bad, or you take the critiques with like the praise. And I think it's awesome, actually.
Yeah, like, I just want to talk more. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak. Like, I wanted to say, like, this game, like, my favorite story, like, Arkham Origins prior to this game was my favorite story. I gotta let this game sit for a bit before I make that decision again. But like, Arkham Shadow really took in, like the story felt really similar to Arkham Origins in the sense that Batman had a character arc here. I'm going off like a different tangent, but Batman had a character arc here. The villains here were used really well into the story. You guys really kept that train going of, like, in the Rocksteady trilogy, Batman was already established badass. He already went through everything, so he's already like making decisions, and he has like mini character arcs in this trilogy. And here, though, Batman, it's like Arkham Origins, his whole like a character development thing was like allies. Like, he was being he really kind of threw Alfred to the side but kept him in. In this game, he's really nice to Alfred, and now he has Barbara as like an ally, and he's like slowly including that. And as well, like, the new character arc here is with Batman Shadow, and like how that was also continued from Arkham Origins at the very end, where we saw like the demon Batman, and he kept that here. So you guys really did a good job in keeping the prequels more about Batman's character development, because it's his early years, so he's gonna have to learn stuff. And I think that, alongside with what we talked about, was really well done, and I noticed that, and that's what stuff I love about Batman. It was awesome.
I said in my review too that, like, you guys really pushed further the concept of him being this like more rageful Batman, this younger, inexperienced Batman, but also it being post Arkham Origins and like us getting that much closer to Arkham Asylum. I really liked how much was packed in there to develop his character so that you can see like, okay, he's starting to become wiser. He's starting to understand the job a little more and understand the point of being the symbol of Batman, which I really, really appreciated. The one I really wanted to ask this question. I'm so excited to be here for this reason because none of us pointed this out when we were at Meta HQ with you guys.
I think I know what you're about to say.
Unless someone did and I missed it. But early in the game, when you're raging out as Batman, you run into a certain thug who picks up two pieces of a broken chair. He holds them and wields them in a very specific way, and he's the only thug in the entire game who can dodge a hit. So I think we all knew who it was after, at least for sure after my second playthrough. I was like, oh, it's that guy. But can you confirm who that is supposed to be?
Or deny?
Let me, if you don't mind, I'd like to touch on what Gotham Paladin was mentioned before I go, and then I think I could thread that needle and get to that question. But in terms of our approach to the story, and character development is really important to us, and we take a very classical approach to storytelling at Camouflage, and it's different than it's not better or worse. It's just different than the Rocksteady approach to storytelling, and that's something that we just had such an education on how to make an Arkham game from so many different fronts, on the gameplay side, which I know that Ryan Darcy could speak to, but also from like the production side, and also the storytelling side. But what we went through so many different paths and different stories that we were developing. But I think Doomblazer actually used this word when he was describing his thoughts on the game, where it was like that level of confidence, the level of confidence that I think the team had in terms of when the rubber had to meet the road, and we had to commit to the story, and then we had to go execute the story. I think we leaned into what we're good at, which is character focused. You put them on a journey, you have an arc, and they have to learn something, and it's all driven by a theme that I probably won't go too deep into it because I don't want. I actually think it kind of ruins it. I find if like directors talk about the theme too much. I really want to keep it open for interpretation, but we had a very specific theme, and that was running through everything in the whole game, whether it was the story, whether it was the music, whether it was the audio direction, the art, obviously, lighting. It just ran through everything. And so, and I think talking to friends who had worked on Origins, it sounds like they had a similar kind of philosophy as well. So it's not. I don't think it's a coincidence, Caboose, that you were feeling that when you're playing through the game and the kind of structure our approach to storytelling. As it relates to that one, that one rat that you're referencing, I probably shouldn't confirm or deny, but I will say that as we've been talking about really openly over the last few weeks, is that we've got the entire team at Camouflage dedicated to Batman Arkham Shadow post launch as well. We've already released our first hotfix we can talk about. We've got another one that's coming out very soon, and then we've got larger updates that everybody on the team is just cranking on because they just don't want to take a vacation. They just want to keep working on this game. They're so motivated. They're so hyped over the reaction. And you might see some additional story bits. I use that word, not like big DLC drops and stuff like that, but there might be some more additional story that's coming out that will help kind of, maybe drive a little bit more forward that character that you're referring to.
Oh, like audio files or
nice.
I want to keep it as a surprise. Let's just say like that character story arc is not complete.
Okay, and also I'm gonna keep this vague too. Like what we discussed at Seattle, those things that were like, could you add this or that? Is that stuff that we probably could be taking into consideration as well, like regards to like the challenge maps that we discussed? Like,
thank you, because I was worried that I was taking up too much of the oxygen in the room for
Ryan
Darcy.
You're not taking enough.
Because and one of the reasons why I really wanted him here is that one thing I love about you guys is that you're not just into the story, you're not just into the gameplay. you're into both for Arkham,
Oh yeah.
right? And it makes like your guys' channel so interesting. It's so cool. So I'm really happy to have Ryan here to be able to talk more about the gameplay. And yes, to your question, yeah, I think we could probably be more open about the different modes and gameplay additions and tweaks that we're going to be making
Okay.
than the story, because I feel like the story stuff I don't want to spoil it when people play, and I don't want to take that away from them. But
Oh yeah.
Ryan Darcy, you want to speak a little bit in terms of like the work and development we're doing to add more content to the game from a gameplay perspective?
Yeah, largely the additional content coming from gameplay is going to come through the challenge maps. And so, if you've completed the game, you'll see that there's 3 combat, 3 predator maps, and there's 1 per chapter that's unlocked. There's 2 chapters that don't have maps, combat or predator maps. We're gonna get those out. We're also looking to the infinite combat and infinite predator mode that showed up in previous games. So I'm really stoked about that. What else? We're looking into extreme challenges like you had in the previous Arkham titles, where the mode will be defaulted to hard and they'll have more difficult enemy types. What else? One of the suggestions that y'all had was the boss challenge, like boss rush, boss mode. We're looking into what that might be. So we'd like to do something there. I don't know what it is or when it will drop, but like that's something we're investigating. Yeah, those are
And just
major
tweaks to the bosses too, I would say. Is it okay? It's safe to say that, right, Darcy?
Sure,
We're looking
yeah.
into
Well,
some of your guys' feedback.
yeah, we're making a few tweaks to the bosses. Like the biggest one I can remember is around Bolton. There's 2 things where like we want he doesn't mix and match a lot of his attacks as much as he could, especially during the final phase. And so I think we're gonna try to ratchet that up a little bit more. Do more than just that kind of Tarzan swing, leaping attack that he does. And then the other thing is, this is like a little bit inside baseball, but one of the fights that we were referencing for the Bolton fight was the Deathstroke fight. And there's a lot of countering and like quick actions, and that's where we kind of started developing our tug of war gameplay, where there's like attacks and counters in a single combo, quote unquote, that we started exploring with Bolton. And one of the things is that when you had that style of boss, the players very frequently pushing the boss up to the edge of the arena, and so we needed a way to like send the player back. In the Deathstroke fight, there's actually it takes control away from the camera, and like Deathstroke like flips around and kind of goes back to the center of the arena, but we can't take control over the player. So Bolton does this like swipe backwards and knocks you back. It doesn't do any damage, but it like looks like an attack, and it's kind of confusing. So we actually want to make that an attack, make it an uncounterable attack. So we'll have a little bit more of a tail. We'll show the red icon, and then it still effectively gets the player back to the center of the arena because you need to evade backwards. So yeah, that's like a minor tweak. I mean, that's like a little bit detailed, but it's stuff like that. We're not going to be like fundamentally changing any of the boss fights, but looking for some difficulty balancing tweaks and like some UX clarity tweaks as well.
Cool. Yeah, that was something we were talking about. Like those like hard mode, like you were asking, like should we make the counter window shorter, that kind of thing. I think that could be beneficial. Yeah, because it's kind of hard to say, because from our perspective, we play these games like religiously. So to see like, I don't know if like the other games aren't really difficult to me. For this, it's like it's the same way. It's just fun to play. But I'm trying to see it from like a new player's perspective, that maybe the difficulty should be a little higher, I guess, just to make it that much more of a engaging combat. So
that's why I was wondering as well when it came to like story. Like, have you guys gotten any feedback on gameplay or even on story? Like, did you hear anybody else's opinions or thoughts on things like the Two-Face reveal, or have you heard anybody speak on difficulty? Because, like we can always discuss this in great length, but I think like Gotham Paladin is saying, at the end of the day, like we've played these games too many times to count, and it's never been a matter of like Arkham Knight was too difficult or Arkham Asylum is too hard. Like we've just all gotten so used to how to play these games that it's like become second nature. So I'm wondering, like, is there feedback from the community that's led you to like ask these questions or wonder about it more?
Ryan Darcy, you want to start with gameplay feedback, and I can talk about story feedback.
Yeah, I'll speak to the gameplay. I haven't heard anyone suggest that it was too easy, especially on hard mode. Um, this is more of a feeling within the team where we're like, "Huh, is hard mode hard enough?" You know, like I think we could push it a little bit
I don't
more.
think it is.
Yeah, yeah. Like a week before release, like hard mode was here, and then I like nudged it like even further. I was like, no, we got to push it. But specifically, the time it takes for the enemy to complete their attack. So like the duration that the counter icon is displayed for. What I would really like to do in hard mode is make that duration window smaller. The thing that's tricky to work around there is it's very animation dependent, and so we got to figure out what do we create new animations. I think the answer is probably not, but like what creative way can we get around that so it still looks good and makes sense. But that's one of the last like knobs that we haven't turned for hard mode that I think could make a real impact on how quick your reaction time needs to be. And yeah, I think that'll be a lot harder. The other thing I'll say is like you guys are talking about how much you guys play the game, and like it's hard to really listen to your feedback. It's the same with the team, right? It's like we've been playing the game forever. It's very hard for us to judge how difficult the game really is. External playtests and like when we had you guys come and play, it's like super beneficial. In fact, some of I've worked with a lot of designers over my career, and the ones that are the most skilled video game players often struggle a little bit with actually creating designs that aren't too complex, because they're able to just take in so much information and process it so quickly. It kind of helps to be like an average gamer, which is what I think I would consider myself. So yeah. I always talk about the team, like you got to put your player hat on and look at it through their eyes. And I've kind of ways like being able to like play like a average player is like a skill you need to learn, and you kind of like lower your reaction time and like get a little bit lazy. And yeah, it's an interesting thing to try to mimic.
Yeah.
Actually, to speak a little bit more on the balance side of things too. One thing that Bill Green, which I'm sure we're going to reference him multiple times throughout this conversation, ex Rocksteady lead designer, who was there at Rocksteady for all the Arkham titles. I was able to stalk him successfully for about a year or so into the early development of Arkham Shadow. Convinced him to get on a phone call, convinced him to check out our prototype, convinced him to join full time, and he really transformed the way that we make games that camouflage. And we're so lucky to have him on the project. And he single handedly did pretty much all of the puzzles that you guys experienced in the waning month or two of development. So, and that was just him. And in addition to all the other work he did with our other designers, it's been really, really fantastic. And one of the core tenets that he was really pushing for and trying to remind us of was that from Arkham Asylum forward, Rocksteady clearly did not intentionally make a very difficult game that had a very high bar that required players to kind of get over in order to get to the end credits. You can kind of button mash your way and make your way through normal mode in Arkham Asylum, and that was looked at as a good thing. And I think that really did speak to that game's ability to be a mainstream hit. And so, as somebody who in my very little free time, if the games that I personally choose to play are on the harder side, right? Like after once things start settling down this game on development of Arkham Shadow, I want to go back to Armored Core, and which is a very difficult game, and I really enjoy that. But that's not the type of game that the Arkham franchise typically is, and we want to make sure that, especially given the fact that this is a bundled game with the Quest 3 and the Quest 3S, it's going to be, it's got to appeal to a broad audience. We have to be really careful about not making the game too hard, but we also don't want to make it too easy. So that feedback that we're getting, I think, is incredibly valuable, and we're going to continue to make tweaks throughout the subsequent months.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. There's some questions like the chat has asked that I kind of typed down. There was one question I'm kind of curious about too. Will the score and soundtrack be, revealed for the game, or like will you guys drop that soon? Because that was something I was looking at actually earlier.
It was we've got in our internal Slack, we've got so many different organized like sub channels shout outs to Ryan Darcy for making sure they're all alphabetical and all make sense. That one of them is our music channel, where we have Cosmo Ginochi in there, along with Seth Wright, who provided additional music, and he was our music designer. Yara, who produced all the music, and actually we posted time-stamped link to Clown Puncher's review of the game, where he talked about how much Cosmo was cooking on the soundtrack, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
I think that he just did such an incredible job. We've got actually, I don't want to spoil it too much, but we have some content coming out in the coming month or two, a little bit more behind the scenes on the soundtrack, which is really, really cool, where we recorded it and all the work that went into it. So super, and I think that's probably going to align with the official release of the soundtrack. It's currently being mixed for soundtrack, because we focused on just mixing it for the game, but the whole process of mixing it for like an official soundtrack release is quite different. So we're in the process of doing that. I have full confidence that's going to be out before the end of the year. We wanted to have it out for release, but actually, this is just a side, but I was happy to hear that they needed a little more time for the mix, because I didn't actually want to release the soundtrack the day before launch or even on launch day, because it's actually really hard to write those track titles without spoiling the story. I don't know if you all, like, many of you are younger than me, but when the Star Wars Episode 1 soundtrack came out and had like spoilers in the track titles, that was like such a bummer. And so, yeah, with the soundtrack coming out after the game's release, I think we could have like more representatives, like track names, if you know what I mean. So that's, but yeah, it's coming, and we couldn't be more excited for y'all to be able to hear it from cover to cover.
Cool.
In that regard, slightly shifting from the music to just the general sound design, that's like the one thing that I didn't cover in my review, but I think that's another integral part into what made this game really feel like a genuine Arkham game. It sounded pretty much exactly the same as all the classic games, if not better in some ways. So like, props to all of your sound designers.
Oh, absolutely. I think, yeah, they crushed it and worked so hard. And the crazy thing is, like, they're not done. I be pretty open about this, but in the waning, so here's actually like a core tenet of game development that's pretty true across like any production. When you're getting into the thick of it and you're months from ship, there's typically a handful, like very specific disciplines that are running really hot. And I actually assume that when you guys are working on your productions too, it's similar. It's audio, it's UI, in our case, localization, sometimes VFX. But yeah, in Arkham Shadows production was no different. And so the audio team just did, I think, like a really fantastic job, given the fact that they had to attach so much audio at the very end as like cinematics are coming online and like the boss battles are getting finalized and the level design and that big scarecrow sequence, came online very late, but the work that they did to make that sound incredible is just, I think, a testament to their dedication and their love for this game and love for the franchise. But like I said, they're not done. They actually have a lot of things that they didn't get into the game in time for 1.0. And so, yeah, I don't want to spoil it too much, but you're going to, as we update the game, you're going to hear that the soundscape has become even more multi-textured, and that the mix is going to become even better. And so that's one of the things I'm just personally really excited about, is like as I review the game post-launch, it's just going to continue to sound better and better, which, very rare, I think, for game development, right? You don't usually have that. So I think we're really lucky to be able to keep the team on the project.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's sick. Another question somebody had, so this is like a part of the story. So when Harvey becomes Two-Face in the courtroom scene, it was kind of unclear to people. So when you counter that thing that Crane's holding, did Batman push that onto Two-Face, or was that like Crane, he kind of just swung his hand to hit Harvey with that vial of acid? Because sometimes, like, when I look back at that scene, you get the counter icon, but it doesn't look like Batman's hand is physically touching Crane. I don't know if that's something you guys wanted to kind of make a little bit ambiguous, or it's like there's a clear-cut thing where did matches push Crane's hand onto Harvey, or is that
I'm gonna plead the fifth on the who did what, like who shot first kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I can say, if hopefully it's still interesting, is that I could talk a little bit about the development of that scene.
Yeah.
In that that one vexed me for 2 years plus. Like, we knew very early on that we were going to do that scene. But actually doing it in VR, there was so many different challenges, but one of them was, the VR aspect of it. Like, how is players an active participant in that moment? And then also the matrix of story and continuity challenges that we talked about a little bit right offline, right? Which is, it's an associate of Falcone, and Twoface and Harvey says this in Arkham Knight, referencing that moment. And then there's also the tape in Arkham City that's referencing that moment. And we had like this big screen up in this conference room that was showing each line that was referencing this moment from the Arkham franchise. And then we would circle that back with DC to make sure that their understanding of it is our understanding of it as well. And just making sure that scene was like, just, we had all of our T's crossed, all of our I's dotted, was really challenging. But back to like the player's action. I'm not saying that this is exactly what happens in Arkham Shadow, but when we were prototyping so many different ways of getting that scene to work, I initially didn't like the suggestion that ended up becoming what you played, because I thought, I don't know, there's something about it I didn't like. I had other ideas, and it didn't really click with me, and I was like, oh, is it really authentic? And then I was on a plane, and whenever I'm flying, I'm usually just reading Batman comics, and I end up reading, I forgot the name of it. It's is it Batman Annual 14? It was a really Two-Face focused one, and it was going back to the very first depiction of that courtroom scene from many, many decades ago. And if you go back and look, it's pretty similar to what we end up doing in the game. And then all of a sudden I kind of flipped around next meeting. I'm like, hey, I'm actually kind of interested in this idea, guys. I actually think there's something there. And they weren't even referencing that initial comic. It was just kind of natural what they came up with, our designers and our cinematic team. So yeah, props to them for just kind of almost like channeling, the history of this character and the history of that moment. And I think, I'm really happy with the execution of it.
So then that brings an interesting question to my mind. Does that mean that there was a possibility of there being a version of that event where you actively took like a cup of acid and threw it in Harvey's face?
I think that's fair to say, yes. In fact, and that was a really big challenge, because poor Ryan Darcy was present during some of these excruciatingly painful meetings, and this is just like a window into why VR development is so difficult. And I don't think VR developers get enough credit for like the challenge that they have. And it seems so simple on the surface. Just have the player do that. Okay. Well, so like what you have, like this glass of acid in front of them, and like, so you start the scene, and I watch how Caboose plays. He's not naughty player. He's not doing everything I want him to do. He's kind of goofing around. He'd like look at different places. He's like kind of like testing the boundaries. So if you put a glass of acid in front of a player before that moment, oh, what's this? Oh, what happened? Oh, I'm going to throw this thing on the judge. Yeah. I'm going to throw this thing on. Like, you can't. It's like so hard to kind of control and have those beats like hit the way you need them to. And so again, like, all props to the team. That was not my idea, but what we ended up finally executing on was a moment that allowed that moment to happen when we needed to do it. It's for the player to be an active participant, and it didn't allow any kind of like large possibility space for it to kind of go awry.
Yeah, like what if the player missed? Like, right? I mean, like,
game over. Go back.
Right? I mean, it's really a difficult problem.
I see. Awesome.
I had a question. I thought it was really cool how, I think it was on launch day or just sometime after, that James Gunn actually tweeted about the game. I thought that's awesome. I mean, obviously, like, DC Studios is like a big new thing, and he's touted like kind of being a bit hands-on with everything, whether it's animation, film, television, and obviously, I guess, the game side of things. Was he involved? I mean, I can't imagine he was involved largely in the process because DC Studios is so new. But to what level was he involved?
Yeah, so he's been very supportive of the game, which has been terrific. And I don't work directly with him, but with my friends over at DC, especially with Randy Ma, like he keeps me up to speed about how James is feeling about the game and how other leadership is feeling about the game. And even in my darkest moments, and I think this actually really helped, in my darkest moments, which I've had a lot on this project, I get on a call with Randy. It's like, hey, like I showed the game to this person or this executive and or this like really powerful creative, and like they're loving it, and like they're just like so impressed with what you're doing here. And just that was something I think I just needed at moments in the game. So yeah, they've been super supportive throughout. And seeing his tweet go out the other day was awesome. Like my Twitter feed just blew up at that moment. So I appreciate him doing that.
Cool. One of the other questions I want to touch more on the Harvey Dent thing, but someone else had a question was the Harvey and Bruce flashbacks, was that inspired by Bruce and Thomas Elliot's in Batman's Hush? Because Bruce and Thomas Elliot is like a childhood friend. Okay, it wasn't. Okay, cool. Because Bruce and Thomas
that
Elliot
was inspired by Batman All-Stars.
Right. Okay.
That whole and so now I can say it, but in the process of doing promotion for the game or doing interviews, people would ask me like, what kind of comics inspired you for the story of Arkham Shadow? I was like, wait a second, I actually can't tell you because it's just going to spoil everything. So that was a big source of inspiration. But again, I think, wow, I mean, I could talk about those dream sequences for hours. In fact, I kind of want to do like a GDC style post-mortem on them because we had learned so many things and it was highly experimental, and I never experienced anything like that in VR. And so, yeah, I could dive into them if you're interested. But at the highest level, that was one of our attempts to make the payoff feel satisfying. It wasn't this kind of Deus Ex Machina. Oh, at the very end, it's like this character I'd never even thought. We had to like so carefully seed the relationship, seed the past trauma, and so much of that story of their childhood was inspired by the comics, our understanding of these characters, but also highly informed by this consultant that we work with named Dr. Eric Bender. If you just go on YouTube, not now, we don't want to lose you, but after this stream, just put in Eric Bender Arkham, and you'll find his GQ series where he's talking. He's analyzing these like DC films.
There's an Easter egg for him in the game, right? I think I caught it on my second playthrough.
I think I've seen those videos.
I've thrown in some Easter eggs. I don't know if I've for Dr. Eric Bender.
It's after you get caught kind of sneaking or spying on Falcone and Bolton, and then you're in like the infirmary and you're speaking to Dr. Leslie. I think one of the books on the table there is by a Dr. Bender, if I remember correctly.
Wow, now I know what I'm going to do after this is go confirm and see if the team put that in there. That's one of those like fun things that, actually I found out, and now we're going on a lot of tangents. Just yesterday, I overheard one of our artists here, Zani, noticing something in the game that I didn't know was in there. And I was like, you guys put that? That's so cool. So yeah, there's like lots of different fun things for me to find too. But Dr. Eric Bender, if you go look him up, such a accomplished clinical psychiatrist and very deep in the lore of DC, just loves it. And he has lots of like great guidance. So a lot of what happened in those dream sequences and our depiction of the past trauma that Harvey experienced was 100% informed by Dr. Bender's understanding, and also him calling in his colleagues to educate us about dissociative identity disorder and what would lead to somebody like in real life becoming somebody like Two-Face. That it wasn't even that story arc too. There's so many other areas where we're depicting mental health or mental health issues. Everything went through Dr. Eric Bender to ensure that we were doing right and that we were being as accurate and as respectful as possible.
Awesome. I want to talk more about Two-Face. So when it comes to like the lore in this game, I feel like you guys really did respect it, like more so like above and beyond. But people are still gonna like think like, because everyone has this preconceived notion that like this was supposed to happen like based on what they said in the Rocksteady trilogy and this and that. So there's a whole thing about the Long Halloween. I'm sure maybe you know about the Long Halloween, but in that comic, it's like that's where Harvey becomes Two-Face, and that's what everyone kind of thought, in the other Arkham games, like that's what happens. But in this game, it's kind of like it's not its own Long Halloween, but it has a lot of those elements in that game. Was that something you guys kind of thought about? Like, because there's this whole thing that's like Long Halloween does happen in the Arkhamverse. That was something that was confirmed in the other Arkham games. But now it's like people are saying it's different because Harvey is now Two-Face in this game, or in the Long Halloween he becomes Two-Face in that storyline. Was that ever something you guys kind of like thought about when going into the series?
Yeah.
My whole thing is like the whole point of the Long Halloween is just to show that like the regular criminals are like going away now, and the supervillains are now the big thing. That's the whole theme of the Long Halloween. So like what happens in that story is like, you know, like there's events like obviously Harvey becomes Two-Face, or Falcone and Maroni die in that comic. Things spoilers for the a million-year-old comic, but yeah, that's what stuff that happens. I'm just curious, was that something you guys maybe like kind of thought about when making the whole Two-Face storyline? I really like what you guys did with Two-Face in this game, but yeah, I was just curious on that.
Yeah, I'll speak specifically about Long Halloween, and then I'm going to zoom out to the meta level. Forgive the pun of like how we looked at the story overall and how different media inspire it. But yeah, specifically for Long Halloween, first of all, my favorite Batman book by far. I love it, and I want to get as much into, just because I'm a fan of. I want to get as much as I can into our game. But you know, one of the things I thought was a little bit disappointing for me, and it's just the reality of productions, is that a lot of our Long Halloween inspired storylines are happening off camera. Things that we're hinting at, things that we're referring to, but you don't see it on screen, including what happens between Origins and Origins Blackgate and Arkham Shadow, and that team up that we refer to, but we don't depict, between Batman and Harvey Dent and Commissioner Gordon going after Falcone. And so, you know, if we ever had an opportunity to do more story content of this game or a future title, I'd love to do like a flashback to some of that. I think that could be really fun. And then, yeah, other things that I don't want to get too much in specifics, but we're referencing things that are happening on the background that are very much inspired by Long Halloween. But we're not one-to-one, as you could tell, and everybody else could tell. And I don't think it should be. And this is where I get, you know, I kind of put my director's hat on and say, hey, this is the call I'm making. And thankfully, Warner and DC were really aligned with us on this, is that you look at the 2022 the Batman Matt Reeves film. You look at the way that Christopher Nolan approached his films. You look at the way that Rocksteady approached their Arkham games, or even WB Montreal, the way that they approached Origins and their inspirations from like from the comics as well. Is you take elements, but you don't take it all. You don't take all the elements. You're inspired by it. You kind of infuse your new creation based on the things that work and the things that are compatible. And then you don't take everything with it. And I think sometimes that could be confusing for like either viewers of a film or players of a game, because you're like, wait, you took these elements, but you didn't take these other elements. And I think that's just part of the creative process is one thing. And then the second thing I want to talk about, and then I'll wrap this up, is, you know, I think it's, sometimes you can't win with some players when they say, hey, this is probably like the depiction of Harvey Dent that we did. Like that wasn't part of the original plan of the Arkham franchise. I'm like, what original plan are you talking about? Like, you think Sefton and the amazing crew at Rocksteady 15 years ago had plotted this whole thing? No, they were making it up with each game, and they did the same thing that we did, which is you do everything you can to make Arkham Asylum as good as possible, right? And then you take one day off, and then you start working on Arkham City. And then they looked at what they did with Arkham Asylum. They had ideas that they were seeding for Arkham City. But then when you get into the thick of Arkham City, you're working on your story for Arkham City, and you want to make sure there's enough continuity. But they're not even perfect with their continuity across those games, as you know.
Right.
And then they do the same thing with Night, and they do the same thing with Arkham VR. And we kind of took the same process. We looked at the previous source material. Everybody's so busy, you don't have this big Arkham Bible that will never ever change. So yeah, we actually just took the same approach that Rocksteady did, and we tried to be as respectful. And I appreciate you, Gotham Palette, and everybody else saying, like, recognizing the work that we did. We did so much homework. Did we get it perfect? No, but I actually am super proud of the team, and to the degree of which I think we really we did our homework and we respected the continuity, because that's important to us.
Yeah, no, I agree, because there's things like, when we were talking about Bellevue, you were like, they never once mentioned Sal Maroni was the guy that threw the acid. You guys like like skimmed over every little bit of dialogue, and he never says it. Only that it says he's tied to Carmine Falcone, which we were in this game. So yeah, like I could totally respect it, and it does fit. If it is it not like 1-on-1 from the comics, sure, but like it does fit. And yeah, like I agree, like the Arkham trilogy, like Rocksteady's trilogy, there's things that are different. Like Jason Todd was different, you know, and like I think it was just like this like Arkham Asylum, Arkham City really felt like a darker animated series version, and it felt like all their classic origins and stuff. But what the prequels do, like Arkham Shadow and Arkham Origins, is that they give the character identity. It gives its universe identity rather. So rather than like, you know, it tells you what actually happened in his universe rather than what the preconceived notion was from the Rocksteady trilogy. Honestly, starting from Arkham Knight to like Arkham Origins to Arkham Shadow, like it gives this universe its own identity to separate it. And the fact that you guys did all that homework to make sure it fits, honestly, I don't really find too many. I don't think I found any continuity issues. Honestly, it's like it all fits. You know, it just people kind of have to sit down and like kind of think like, okay, just let it stew, because you know they had those notions and now it's different. So you know people are gonna react one way or another. But yeah, that's just how I feel.
That's gonna be fun, actually. Yeah, the narrative changes over time too. Like how people think about Arkham Shadow today is going to be different than how you guys are thinking about it 6 months from now, from a year from now, and that's going to be something I think is going to be really fun. But yeah, I'll admit actually we just took 1-for-1 as the origin of Ventriloquist, which I know is a character that you really love.
Yeah, it was.
We went just very literal with that one, right?
Exactly.
And I'm really excited. I'm really happy with like how we approach that character.
Yeah, so I guess I am biased for the game because some of my favorite villains are Two-Face and Ventriloquist, and they're like really highlighted in this game, so that was really cool to see. Yeah, so I'm glad you guys got that down. A question, unless anyone else had a question, I'll just go on down the list that I have about the game. Was there anything else you guys wanted to say before I move on? Or?
I got something to say.
Yeah.
So I saw one of the commenters say this. They're wondering if the boss fight where you fight Shadow Batman was inspired by the Fear Toxin Batman fight and Kill the Justice League. You want to talk about that, Ryan?
I'd love to have Ryan Darcy talk about the details of that boss. But let me just say let me just address the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League version of the Batman boss fight, like the history behind that one, which is, and Ryan Darcy can confirm this. We had this idea for the Shadow Batman boss fight long before we all, along with you guys, saw the first teaser of the Kill the Justice League Batman boss fight, and then eventually played it, and we obviously saw a lot of similarities. And I remember calling DC and saying like, before the game came out, I'm like, are we okay? Like, is ours gonna be too similar? He's like, no, I purposely didn't tell you guys about that one because I felt like you guys were going in different paths, even though on the surface it looked very similar. You got a big Batman boss fight, right? Like, it was huge, larger than life. Mm-hmm. But he's like, really, I think that's like the only similarity. I think you guys are going in very different directions, and I think that's fine. And I don't want you guys to worry about the Rocksteady one. And when we played it, we thought, okay, yeah, we're good. We didn't change a single thing in the development of our boss fight after we had played it and saw videos of it prior to that. So, but there's a little bit of backstory on, but we were surprised, obviously, as you guys probably were, but for different reasons. Ryan Darcy, you want to talk about the core inspirations and anything you're willing to share about that? I think incredible boss fight that the team put together.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll say is that when that came out, Nathan Scott, who's the designer that worked on all of our boss fights, he hit me up on Slack. He's like, "Oh, dude, what the heck? Like, they're doing like something so similar. Like, I don't know. It's like, just make it better. Just make sure ours is better." And I don't know if we did, but I knew that was a possibility. So that's what we went for. But the inspiration is probably very clearly the Ra's al Ghul fight in Arkham City. I mean, to the point where I was like a little bit worried that people were going to be like, "This is like the exact same thing." There's so much we stole from there, and that was actually that was by far the most fun boss to work on. Everything just like worked out of the gate. It just and we I'm trying to think. I think we even had some prototypes that we didn't. We absolutely did have some prototypes that we didn't include because it was just too much for a single boss fight. We had this sequence where there were like a bunch of Shadow Batmans in the room and they're all still. And then you'd have to look around the room, and then one of them moved when your back was turned, and you had to like kind of suss out like which one was moving, and that was super cool. It just didn't. maybe in a future boss battle, if we have a chance, we do something.
Implement that.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
It was inspired by the final moment with Joker and
Yeah, I
the
was
first
thinking
person
about
moment
that.
in Night.
Yeah. And then I think I can't remember, Peyton. I think we were talking about this maybe on the Kind of Funny show, but the smoke cloud sequence, like when you get one of the last punches on I think one of the minions, and then it transitions to that, like, Shadow Batman stalking you in the smoke cloud. For me, it was always inspired by that scene in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie where, like, he's like you guys too young for this. He's infiltrating the Ku Klux Klan, and they show off, like, they like drop a smoke bomb and like pull all the bells off the guy without making a noise. And it's obviously that's not exactly what we did, but I always had that, like, I always thought that scene was so cool in Ninja Turtles, so that's always what I referenced in my head. Yeah.
Cool.
You brought up very briefly there the thing about Joker, right, from Arkham Origins, kind of the inspiration there. This is the first Arkham. Well, actually, I guess maybe if you don't count Origins Blackgate, but even actually, did Origins Blackgate have Joker in it? I don't remember.
There.
Yes,
he's in there. Okay. So this is like the first Arkham game where you don't see Joker, or at least he's not
early in the game.
visual. Like, what was there ever talk to, like, have him not necessarily have like a bigger role, but just have something visually where you can like have like a face to face?
Yeah, well, from the very beginning, I think we were all aligned, all the partners, that look, Joker's awesome, but we can't have another game where it's like,
the Arkham games have had enough.
We just can't, guys, right? And I think everybody's like cool with that, right? I think Night. Just speaking personally, when I played Night, I thought when Joker had such a presence initially, I was like, guys, what are you doing? What are you thinking? This is like too much. You just go too far. But then when I started playing through the game, I thought it was actually quite brilliant, where you have all these moments where he's just there, but he's like kind of invisible to the rest of the world. And I think I really love like what they end up doing. But yeah, I not only think we could have done anything better than that. So it was like, okay, Joker just takes up all the oxygen out of the room. Let's just have him be more of if anything, a cameo. But we did explore lots of different story scenarios in which he was in the background pulling strings and influencing not only Harleen Quinzel, but also Jonathan Crane. In fact, we had a moment where in the Corpus Callosum area of our Arkham Ward, you would go to this room where you can see that, like, Joker like had basically like an office, but both of the wings of Arkham Ward were connected to it. So it's almost like he's consulting with Harleen Quinzel in his cell, but also, but every once in a while, like, Jonathan Crane would come and talk to him, and he's just manipulating everything from the background. But we obviously abandoned that idea, in part because we didn't, again, want it to be like, at the end of the day, it was all Joker pulling all the strings. And so, but on the flip side, we didn't want to have no Joker. So, it was pretty easy to call up Troy and say, hey, do you want to reprise your role as Joker again? And obviously he was super into it. So I'm really happy with the depiction. Didn't show him. We put him in the golden path, and then we just kind of go on our merry way.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the things too. It's like people are always saying like, oh, Joker's overused, this or that. But then when you don't have Joker in the game, people are asking like, oh, where's Joker? Like, where is he gonna be? So it's like, I'm glad you guys put him in as sort of like, I wouldn't say like a Hannibal Lecter thing, but you had like that cool dialogue with him. Showing like a big character like Joker barely, I think, is really effective than just having him like front face in the game. That works. It kind of reminds me of, like, just for a comparison, like the Batman 2022. Like, they had a deleted scene with the Joker. That was really cool. But
exactly.
They deleted it because that would have taken over, like, everyone was going to talk about him rather than the Riddler. So it's kind of similar in that vein,
right.
Which is awesome. I'm glad the way you guys used Joker in the game. Yeah.
And big props to Chris Sims, who wrote the dialogue for the back and forth with Joker. He had a lot of fun with it. It was a lot of fun for Troy to perform.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of leads into a question where, I mean, I guess it kind of does or not, but there was a question where it's like, was there any funny or like maybe ideas on the cutting room floor that you guys cut out that you guys can talk about, or like maybe was anyone else considered to be the Rat King when writing that whole storyline before Two-Face? Anything notable?
Yeah, we had a lot of ideas. We had a lot of ideas.
Like any notable, anything? worth
Yeah, you
talking
can tell I'm
about?
a little hesitant to get into it, but um, like let's just say, like I mean, again, Ryan Darcy was present for a lot of these really painful story meetings. We're just meandering and just going, okay, no, it's this character. No, it's
Yeah.
this character. No, it's this character. And I can't remember exactly what month this was, but it was probably about, I want to say about 2 years ago or so. Um, you get to a point, you get to a point in the creative process where, creative process typically starts off with a lot of excitement and blue sky and everything's great. And I'm sure you guys experience this all the time. I'm gonna make this video, and in your mind it's going to be this amazing thing, and then you start working on it, and you put out your ideas, and then you're like, okay, this is not as compatible with this, and this is not working out as much as I want it to be, and it gets kind of messy. And then when you have to like finally go into your final execution, you gotta choose what you want to do. You gotta put that stake in the ground. You gotta like cut a bunch of stuff, and you just gotta focus. And I remember having a moment where it was about, what are we doing with the Rat King? What's the story? And we got to commit. And with a lot of conviction, I came to the team and said, Rat King is Harvey Dent. It's the shadow side of Harvey Dent. And we're going to go, we already knew that we were going to be exploring the theme of the Carl Jung shadow. And this is what it is. And this is why it's going to work. And now let's go commit to it, and let's go make it work. And thankfully, the team was super responsive to it. Again, with our partners over at DC as well. And then we just kicked everything into high gear, and and then X amount of time later, we just barely made it to the finish line. So that was we went down a lot of different paths. Let's just say.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear. Yeah.
I got a gameplay question. I don't mean to like keep asking like, oh, what could have been, but one of the bits of gameplay that I noticed are obviously missing from what we normally expect out of Arkham games is the dive bomb, pull up, and glide for even longer. So I guess to you, Ryan Darcy, was that ever explored? Because I know you don't get much height in the game, and it's not necessarily like an open world, but sometimes you do get high up enough where I feel like maybe I could have hit a dive bomb and stayed up in the air for a little longer. Was that something you guys ever thought of and it just didn't work, or?
Yeah, I mean, I largely. Well, first of all, note that it wasn't an asylum, and asylum was our spiritual
True.
successor, right? Or we
Yep.
hope, but that's kind of like what we were taking most of our inspiration from. And I think, I mean, it was obviously great in city. You spend so much more traversing across, greater distances and from greater heights, and like there's so much more opportunity to do it in city. And they're just. I think you're right that there probably are some instances in our game where it's like, I probably could do it from here. But because there were so few, it was something that, it was like, hey, if we ever get an opportunity to do something more like city, like 100%, that's at the top of my list. If you're going to be traversing longer distances, but yeah, largely just it didn't make sense to add it for our asylum sized game, basically.
That kind of leads into something I was thinking about. Like, I thought the prologue of the game was like top tier, like absolutely insane. I love traversing through like these sections of Gotham that we got to visit. Was there ever like a thought process where the game was going to be more like a structured level design throughout Gotham? Because I love going to Jezebel Guns. I love going to like the top of these buildings and seeing all these recognizable buildings. And the Blackgate thing was really cool, and I love that. And I like switching between matches and Batman. But Gotham City is Gotham City. It was really cool to see that. So was there ever an idea to add maybe something more to visit Gotham? Was there ever like an idea for like a structured level design, or was the idea always going into Blackgate and having like that as the central hub kind of thing?
I mean, early on, I think, yeah, we had the idea of, was Blackgate was the focus. When we initially pitched the game idea to Warner Brothers Interactive, it was Arkham Asylum inspired game structure, and I think very early on, Ryan Darcy and I were really excited about doing like prison brawls, right? And something that was melee focused, and we knew this was guidance from Warner Brothers. Was the Matches Malone idea came from them initially. And at first I was like, what? How would that work? And then we worked out the story. I was like, wait a second, this could be really cool. Because without getting too much in it, like I think Bruce is able to explore some of his shadow as under a pseudonym, right? And so that was the structure. We kind of knew very early on about the Blackgate structure, but we knew also we had to build a prologue. And the prologue terrified the team. because it was going to be based in Gotham City. And we knew the limitations what we had from a just from a hardware perspective, and we knew that we weren't going to be able to fly around it like in Arkham City or Arkham Knight or Arkham Origins. And so we thankfully have a very talented, I think, smart team, and one of those talented and smart team members, our art director Matt Core, came up with this concept that he called an Arkham dungeon, or a Gotham dungeon. Where it does have constraints. It feels like you're in Gotham City, but you're not open world. And so there was never any kind of exploration of having more openness or in Gotham. It was just try to execute that sense that you're in the city, but it has those kind of restrictions. And when we started playing it, I think we started to really believe it. But on paper, it kind of made me nervous because everybody's so used to be able to explore Gotham City the way that they just want to. But I think the facade worked, and the fact that you loved the prologue, and actually we really loved working on it. I think it proved to be quite successful. But that was a pretty big gamble that we took as a team, is to make a kind of a linear Gotham City, and I think it worked.
One thing I'll add on top of that is, like, I mean, this isn't the only example of us having to do something like this, but you kind of have to go back to like the early console days and look at how they depicted cities and how they depicted where you could and couldn't go. Because you couldn't do open world cities back in PS2 or of course PS1, and so some of those tricks that we kind of, I think, as an industry forgot because we haven't needed them for so long. Like, we're having to employ them back on this mobile chipset for the hardware. I don't know exactly what our shadow solution was, but I know a lot of the rendering techniques. We're looking back at old PlayStation games. And seeing how that stuff was faked, and so that's what we were trying to bring into the headset.
Specifically, original Xbox games and Xbox 360 games. We're looking at how they did their depictions of shadows, real time shadows, such as Chronicles of Riddick, Butcher Bay was a big inspiration from us from a shadow perspective, also a gameplay perspective. You're in a prison, melee brawler, and then some other titles, but yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say is, like, one of the nightmare things about Gotham is, Bill Green, who worked on the previous Arkham games, one of his mantras is, if it looks grappleable, it has to be grappleable. So, and we didn't like 100% get that in Gotham. Like you will see things where it's like, oh, it looks like I can grapple, but I can't. But it was that mindset that really, kind of drove us to get to where we were at, even though it could have been better. But I think you'll notice the previous Arkham games are really good about that. And it's also always like a push-pull with the art team, right? Because like it forces art decisions that you might not want to make if you're looking to make something more aesthetically pleasing. But we can't confuse the player by making it look like they can do something but can't, because then they're just gonna, it doesn't matter how beautiful it looks, they're gonna get frustrated because they're gonna be confused. So
cool. That's awesome to hear. Awesome. Glad I got that answer, because I was curious about that. I got some more questions here. If anyone else got any more questions they want to ask before I jump into it.
I do have one question.
Oh yeah, you can go first.
Thank you. I want to know, what was the most surprising thing about the reception to this game thus far? Like, was there any specific detail that you didn't think would get as much praise, or even something that you thought would get more praise from general fans?
I think I can say that the thing that I was most nervous / curious about was going to be what people think of the daytime matches sequences, because it's just so different from the previous titles. It's like, to me, in my head, I'm like, oh man, we're porting this game to VR, like that's enough, like we don't need to go. But of course, Peyton took the risk, and I think it paid off at the end of the day. I think it's really cool, and there's something about like being in VR that, like, those slower moments where you're just kind of like, exploring with like really good environmental storytelling and voiceover acting, like it just, like, you kind of need a break in VR more than flat screen games, and so I think it's maybe a bit more welcome. But obviously it's up to the players to decide whether or not this was a right move, wrong move. I'm sure you'll find people on both sides of the line, but that was the thing I was most curious about.
Yeah, I think, I'll touch on the matches, prison stuff, and then I'll talk about my biggest surprise to the reaction so far. But that's a great answer, because I think I'm already at risk of forgetting all the anxiety we had about the matches sequence because, to Ryan Darcy's point, it was so different. And is this the fantasy that people want to have when they play the game and they buy a Batman game and they're not playing as Batman? And for all of you who are at our office playing the game from start to finish, you probably remember at the end of every chapter, I would ask you, were you playing as matches too long? Were you getting kind of fatigued? Were you just getting and that was the first time we really got pure signal on that. And I think to mine and Ryan Darcy's relief, you guys came back and said most of the time you said, yeah, it just felt like just about enough, just perfect amount of time as matches because I could use a break, and I like that the golden path was pretty short. So if I wanted to explore and I wanted to listen to the countless minutes or hours of side content and do all that, I could, but I wasn't forced to. And that was a big relief because from the first 6 months of development, Ryan Darcy was banging this drum, like, don't overdo the matches stuff. You got to allow players to become Batman when they want to, within reason. And I think he was like this voice on my shoulder, like so annoying the whole project, but so essential because I would have, we will go to the details, but I wanted to go way further with like the prison simulator, the prison fantasy. We could if you really want to, but and then I'll go talk about go ahead.
Left to his own devices, this guy's a madman. So I think we balance each other out pretty well, actually.
I think we do,
yeah, and no, like there was a lot of like ideas about how to make it a bit more of like a prison simulation where it's like, really feeling like you're in prison, but it's like, is that really like what the player is going to want to experience? And even various people on the team had like different thoughts about like what would like how much like suspension of disbelief that they could put in there. And even the choice to like give matches gloves, it's like, oh, they let them have gloves in prison. It's like, it's Arkham, like like they don't really the rules, it's not real, right? So it just seemed cooler. So
awesome. Before we go to Doomblazer's question, I want to tell you what my biggest surprise was for reception. I was pleasantly surprised that players and that critics were able to overlook some of the rough edges of the game for version 1.0. The game, as you all know, guys, like came in really hot. You played a version of it pre-release that was really buggy and really crashy. And to the team's credit, they just made it so much better in time for launch, but it wasn't perfect. And if you look at, I think the biggest critique, the most common critique of the game at launch was that there was too many rough edges and it could impede some of the experience. And I'm assuming anybody watching the stream or who watches this video after the fact, if you played the game during launch week, you probably experienced a few rough edges that, we didn't want to be in the game, but we just weren't able to address all of them in time. But I think we've got our first hot fixes out there live addressed. It has like 40 really critical, good fixes in there based on feedback we got from reviewers who were playing the game beforehand. And also as players were jumping into the game and playing the game in ways that we weren't expecting. And the team was watching that in real time and fixing those things in real time. And that went into hotfix version 1.01, which is now live. And we're so happy to have that out there. And now we're monitoring all the channels and we're getting feedback on Discord from our troubleshooting channel, which all can join. And if you're willing to, it'd be actually really helpful because now we're identifying like the next wave of things that, the one layer deeper of things that we can go fix. And so we're working on the next update to the game. And we're just going to continue to do that over the next few months. So I would expect, by the time we get to the holidays, that a lot of those rough edges have been ironed out. And I feel bad that we weren't there at day one, but I think it speaks to the content of the game and people's just enthusiasm for what we did, that they're able to look past a lot of that, which I greatly appreciate, deeply appreciate.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Doomblazer. Do you have a question too?
Yeah, to add on, one of the positives I've seen with the reception of this game is one of the casting choices, Elijah Wood as Scarecrow. I was also surprised when I found out it was Elijah Wood, and I thought he was doing really good in the role as Scarecrow. You want to tell us what led to that casting? Like what inspired you to cast him?
It was, I talked about this a little bit on the Batman Arkham videos developer Q&A series that number 4, which we've done 4 up until this point. We hope to be able to do more. It's been such a great partnership with that channel. And And so, yeah, what I mentioned very briefly there is that from very early on, we just had one actor in mind for Jonathan Crane, to the extent that I think it was like highly risky the way that we were just, it was just all of our hopes and dreams were all tied to this one actor. We had no backup plan. And so we would talk like almost jokingly because we never, I think some of us in some of my days too, I don't think we ever thought we could convince Elijah to join the project, but we just kept talking about him. Eventually it came time to, we have to cast this character. What I did actually at this office, in this room, I recorded a video in which I talked about, where I spoke to Elijah. I was going to be going through his agent, and I told him about the project. And then we would cut to concept art. We would cut to, moments from the game that we would have him depict and perform. And so, I tried to show to him like how we're respecting the character and why we were thinking about him from early on. And then I also threw in some personal anecdotes as well, where in fact I started off like saying, "You probably don't remember me," and I doubt he did. But I actually bumped into him at a Smashing Pumpkins concert in Los Angeles many years back, and I saw it was Elijah Wood. I knew he was a big gamer, and I just walked up to him and started talking about like what games you play and stuff like that. And we chatted for 10, 15 minutes. He was very gracious about it. I felt really bad actually. It's like this poor guy can't go to a concert without some annoying person coming up and talking to him. But he was very gracious about it. So and I don't know if you remembered that, but I, wanted to thank him for that. And then I led into my big pitch about how we would love to partner with him on the project. And thankfully he came back and said, "Oh, you'd love to do it." And then thankfully we were able to get the announcement out right before the launch of the game, which like blew up the internet. And it's just one of many, many examples on this project where the stars aligned. I feel like we got really lucky. The rest is, I'm really happy with how he performed. His character was amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, it was it's definitely one of the crazier castings, and that just worked out perfectly in the game.
Yeah.
So I really liked it. Kind of like, so another question that kind of leads into that, where like, was there any villains that didn't make the game that you guys considered during development that should have been in the game? People were asking like, like Riddler's not in the game. Riddler's in every game. This game takes a lot of things like that. Like, there's traditional things in Arkham games that aren't in this game. Like Riddler's a big example. But was there any other villains in the game that you thought you considered adding into the game that just didn't make it?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, we're very brutal when it comes to iteration and cutting. Mm-hmm. Really vicious. So a lot of villains that made their way in there early on didn't make their way into the final cut of the game. I've noticed some people jumping into the data of the game, which always terrifies me. Like, what are they going to find? And somebody found an image of Croc in the game, and I will reveal here exclusively that at one point, I start laughing when I think about this because I think it's so funny. You guys might not find it as funny as I am. But in the group therapy scene, we had, I think this is maybe a COVID joke because we were working on this game still during COVID. We had like the whole group therapy, and then we had a monitor where Killer Croc was streaming into the group therapy as well, because he obviously has to be separated from the other prisoners, right?
Yeah.
And so we had Croc up on the monitor, and so it's just like in real life too when you're having these meetings in real life. But there's like one person who's beaming in from Zoom, and you kind of forget their presence, and everybody's like, "Wait, we haven't heard from Croc in a while," and it's like, "Oh, I'll tell you about my." It was hilarious, but it was just like one too many things for that scene, which was already running a little long. And it was a scene that many people in the team were trying to kill repeatedly. And I just like protected that thing like as much as I could. I wanted that group therapy scene, but I also took their feedback. Like I was concerned as they were that it was going to be too long. So sorry, bye Croc. Even though I think that would have been hilarious, and other things we tried to do in that scene just to keep it tight. And man, am I so proud of that scene. That moment when I think Bruce, in a way, is taking the opportunity to talk openly about the trauma that he had as a child because he could do it because he's basically got a mask on. He just comes out and says it.
Right.
My parents were killed in front of me as a young child. And then to see Joe's reaction to it, and you could just see it in processing that. Like, holy crap, man. Like, so proud of everybody involved, and also the talent, how they performed that was so good.
Right. That scene was probably one of the most pivotal scenes that like showed everyone's character like perfectly. Like Harley Quinn in this game, like she's very kind and like genuinely trying to help these people, which is completely juxtaposing how like pure evil she is like in the Rocksteady trilogy. Crane is like perfectly established to be like this sleazy, still pretty much like Scarecrow, just not actually Scarecrow yet kind of guy. Joe Chill seems very like he's very like what you said, like he's very regretting of what he did.
Yeah, very empathetic.
Yeah, and the ventriloquist was also like you get to see that too, and you get to see Woody. And I love the voice actor for Woody, like perfect. Completely whole mob boss voice actor nailed it perfectly. And then his character,
Dwight Schultz. Yeah.
Yes, and then go ahead.
It's almost like we have it in our company charter that we have to work with Dwight Schultz in every single video game. He was our big bad guy in Republic, and actually, I my first exposure to Dwight was actually on Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. It was my first project working with Chris Zimmerman Salter, who was our voiceover director for this game, and Iron Man VR, and Republic, and then Metal Gear Solid 4 before that, and then also Halo 4 when I worked with her on Halo 4, and then Metal Gear Solid 4, and my first project was Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, and Dwight came into the studio, and he performed this character named Python, and I'm like, who the heck is... I mean, I knew him from like A-Team and Star Trek, but this guy's on another level. And I have to work with this guy for the rest of my life. And so I have worked with him for the rest of my life. And this is an opportunity to work with them with Arnold Wesker. It's awesome.
That is very awesome. And the whole scene was just really well done. So yeah, there was not much comedy in that scene, more so just everyone's characters being like really well portrayed. So I get why the Killer Croc thing wasn't there. I would personally love that. That would have been so funny, just like spear over
so
the
fun.
side.
I can vouch that it was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. It was so good.
Kind of wish you guys.
Do you agree that was the right move, Ryan Darcy, that we cut it, or should we have just made it even longer?
I don't know. I don't want to suggest it was the wrong call. It was hilarious. So there's no doubt. Yeah.
Can I ask, was it the Origins design for Croc that you guys were going to go with? Or, okay.
Yeah, we didn't get that far, but yeah, it probably would have been the Origins design. We would have had Kari, return as Croc there. Although we were able to have Kari return as Croc via the Echoes, which is a very late addition to the game. Did not exist 6 months ago. These Echo kind of orbs that you look at and they explode and then they play back different moments from the two previous games in the timeline. That thing came together at the very end, and I'm really happy that we were able to do that.
Yeah, those were insane. You just can't replay them. I wish you could replay them in the thing. So
Yeah, I'm with you. That's just something that we just ran out of time to do. But before the end of the year, I have to imagine that you'll be able to go into the database and be able to play them back. Like that's definitely on our list of things to do.
Great.
I gotta ask, did you guys re-record the lines, or did you use them from the old games? Because they sounded kind of different. I don't know.
Yeah. That's honestly the idea for the flash for those echoes were a combination of. They have kind of a similar feature in Alan Wake 2, which is one of the only games I've played for fun over the last year and a half because we're just so focused on playing this or finishing this game. But I did play Alan Wake 2, and they even call them Echoes. I think actually after the fact, I didn't know it because I named them Echoes, and then I went back and looked at Alan Wake 2. Apparently, they're called Echoes too. So they have these kind of flashbacks with kind of echoey VO-based moments. So that was big inspiration. But also for Metal Gear Solid 4, we had flashbacks, and in Metal Gear Solid 4. We did re-record with the actors these flashbacks from the previous Metal Gear Solid games. And without getting too much into the weeds on it, there's kind of actors' rights and there's approvals and like actually going and getting those like old sound files and everything. So for a lot of reasons, it's actually just like we did with Metal Gear. It was the right approach is to call back the actors and ask them to kind of do the same reading. And some of them are very, very accurate, and some, their voices changed or whatnot. But we tried to be as accurate as we possibly could.
Great. That's really cool to hear. Well, something I want to talk about the Croc thing is relating like humor. Like Batman's pretty like funnier in this game throughout the game. There's like moments where like there's a scale of justice. Where it's like the only scales I care about the scales of justice. Or with like Oracle, like he's like she's like I'm gonna keep this pipe. He's just like don't care. So I really like the character moments with Batman and how he evolves with like the allies thing, and now he's like a little bit, I wouldn't say easygoing, but he plays along with like these humor things and stuff. So that was really cool to see.
Because to speak on that real quick, Clown Puncher I think touched on that in his video, where honestly, the humor of Batman reminds me of the humor that I felt in the booth with David Hayter on Metal Gear Solid 4. I think he is, as Snake, I think he's hilarious. The dry humor, like just his reactions to certain things. We were just laughing so much in the booth back in the day in 2007, 2008, when we were working on Metal Gear Solid 4. And I think we definitely incorporated that with Batman in this game. And all the credit goes to the writing team, who just in normal discourse is hilarious. Our lead writer on the project, our narrative director, Brendan Murphy, I've been working with him. He's been at Camouflage since basically day one. And if you go back and play Iron Man's hilarious. So much of those are some really great jokes, and he's just got a great sense of humor. But he's like surrounded by just really great writers who are also super funny. Alex O. Smith, who's got a very storied career in writing and also localization from games such as like Final Fantasy 12 and Vagrant Story, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, and then Jay Howell is another writer of ours who I work with on Metal Gear and other projects, and then Chris Sims, who I mentioned, and then also one of our designers. Like surprisingly, just a really gifted writer, Paul Alexander. He wrote a lot of the dialogue in the prison, where you go and just kind of interact with the different prisoners and inmates, and some really good stuff there too. And he did a lot of the ventriloquist back and forth as well. So yeah, we've just got a funny, smart writing team. But you gotta draw that line, because we explore really serious topics in this game. So we had to find those moments where it's okay to have some humor, and then we bring it back to like all the dark, crazy stuff that I want to explore.
Yeah.
What I like a lot
ahead.
of the time is that it never really feels like it's trying to be overly funny most of the time. Like, obviously when Joker shows up, you're gonna tell a bunch of jokes.
Yeah.
And obviously having Batman tell that shoelace joke was absolutely hilarious. I was losing it every time. But for most of the runtime, it's never like they're trying to tell a joke right here. This is your moment to laugh. Like, you just laugh because it's just naturally funny. And that's what I absolutely loved.
Yeah, although we did let Martin Jarvis cut loose with his dad jokes every time you get a new gadget, which I know you noticed that as well. But on the note of talkie, I saw it in one of the comments. Like, one of the things we are going to do as we continue to update the game is we're going to dial back a lot of the nudge lines. And I was watching you, Gotham Paladin. You were looking at an echo. You're watching an echo or listening to an echo, and then Batman interrupts it with a nudge line. That is one thing that we don't feel like we hit perfectly at launch, and so we're going to dial back some of those things, because I think somebody in the comments even said that, like, hey, I'm trying to solve this puzzle, and the solution was revealed to me too early. Hear you 100%, and the team just ran out of time to kind of tweak those values, so we're going to continue to do that over the next 2 months.
I also noticed that just strictly for like exploration, or like if I'm going to try and solve a puzzle and I was stumped on it, or I'm like there was one puzzle I found where like I'm sitting there, like I had to like take the headset off, write down numbers, start doing math, and then I remember just hearing these reminders of like, I gotta go here, and it's like, I know.
Yeah, like, let me just do this puzzle, Batman. Come on,
yeah.
Give me a break. So I'm with you.
That's really awesome.
To add on, I like how in this game you can actually choose what you want to say in some parts of the game. It makes it feel more interactive, something we haven't really gotten in the previous installments. So it's a small thing, but I like it. I like how you added it in.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to make it more of a payoff. I always try to do that with our games, and sometimes succeed, sometimes fail. But at the baseline, even if there's not a big payoff at the end where you get like the dramatic, like different ending and things like that, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's kind of an experimental idea, but just allowing the player to choose, I think, allows you to embody the character a little bit more, and also I think increases to a degree replay value, where you just go through and say, hey, I asked this thing, or I said this thing before, and now I'm going to try it differently here. Big credit to Ryan Darcy and the team for their development of that. Doing that for VR, kind of corralling the player, and all the different UX challenges that was involved in the dialogue choices. I think it landed pretty well, but that was also yet another challenge that we faced on the project.
Speaking of challenges, actually, one of the big questions that I had was after figuring out the crazy translating of combat where Batman punches to people instead of walking up to them. Thank you, Ryan Darcy. What would you say was the biggest roadblock in terms of translating gameplay?
Yeah, I mean, sticking with combat, I think the next most difficult thing was the off-screen countering, which we didn't have right out of the gate. Right out of the gate, you just had to you had to physically. Well, yeah, we had the off-screen notification, but we didn't have the ability to just throw out your hand, which would automatically snap turn. So you had to either snap turn or physically turn in order to do it, and it just it was more reliance on the stick. It was harder to keep your rhythm. And so when Troy figured that one out, Troy Johnson, who's the engineer who led the effort on the combat, that's when I feel like, okay, now we have all the major pieces for combat. Another stumper for us was the grapple gun. That was there was a lot more friction behind the usage, and I've actually seen some videos call out like, oh, I wish the grapple gun was more like you had to grab it and aim, and there's so much more you could do with it in VR. And it's one of those things where like the players only got so much RAM, they're only able to process so much, and we also had limited gadget holsters, and so we made the decision to go with a more of a quick button press instead of what we had before, which was we never had it on a holster, but you had to like press the button to aim, and then it would show up the reticle, and then you released, and then it attached to the object, and then you had to like tug as well. We had like a gesture involved with it, and if you're like really adept at the game and you've been playing it for a long time, like you could do it, and it would feel pretty good, and it didn't feel like an obstacle. But especially knowing that this would be so many people's first time in VR, we opted to not add more complexity and more VR interaction there, and just do the simpler things. So those are the main things. That the redirect was another one, strangely. Largely that was just like the decision to do the auto 180 after the redirect was like really helpful, because there was a lot of friction in having to like either again physically turn around or hold the stick down to do a 180. So that was another thing that really helped finally get that feature over the finish line. I'm trying to think, Peyton, what else took a long time?
I was going to throw it the hold to reorientate your vision in on the vantage points in Predator. I thought was really well executed, but that was a big challenge because we found that people, before we implemented that, people would zip up to a vantage point, they would zip to another one, and now their orientation's different, and they would get confused.
Yeah, it was like every time you zipped up to a perch, it was like snap, snap, and it really messed with the flow and slowed the player down. I mean, just in general, like figuring out like how to not have the player grab the wrong gadget. Like, oh my God, so much time went into figuring out exactly what those collision boxes are and exactly where they're placed. And that was a bit of a nightmare. For a long time, you could pull many batarangs from your chest as well. There wasn't just the one. And so like, especially people like me, I'd be going crazy, like going super fast. And when you started doing that, all of a sudden you'd like, grab the gadget on the other side of your holster and like throw a explosive gel instead of the batarang. And it'd drive me nuts. But those are the things that are top of mind for me that were a bit of a challenge.
Question, because I mean, when we were in Seattle, we obviously played a lot of it standing, but for some of us, we also played it sitting down a little bit. I probably should have provided this feedback back then, but I'll ask just in case there's a tip I'm missing out on for grabbing gadgets when I'm playing while sitting down, because I'm having a lot of difficulty reaching over to get like the explosive gel or the disruptor. So is there something I'm missing? Because I mean, I have the handles on my chairs, and I know that maybe those are what are getting in the way.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, if you have arms on your chair, I mean, mine like kind of fold down and up, so I never have them there. That is one of the trickier things, and Yeah, I'd say not having arms on your chairs. My best suggestion for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Well, I like the way you guys incorporated the gadgets, like the grapple gun. Like it kind of, to go back to like the Matt Reeves Batman. It feels like the grapple gun there, where like he pulls it out of his hand, and like the battering too felt kind of inspired by that too, because like it's actually like a battering, like it comes back to you. So that was pretty cool the way you guys incorporated that. And I had like collision box stuff like that too, where you're like, I'm going super fast, and like I actually grab my battering instead of the explosive gel and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I think overall it was pretty well done.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be like a big inhibitor for VR. If I feel like in general, if devs like don't kind of really figure out the holster situation, the way I always described it is like grabbing a gadget needs to be as reliable as a button press. Like, can you imagine like if like 1 times out of 10 when you hit the jump button it didn't jump? Like people would go nuts, right? Like,
Right.
and we need to approach with that same level of fidelity for VR gestures. So.
Cool.
I kind of want to ask also on that note, what was like the thought process behind adding the gadgets? Obviously, you've got like a lot to choose from. So, what kind of inspired you to narrow it down to the specific ones that you ended up choosing for the final version? Yeah.
It's a good question. So long ago now. I mean, we explored other gadgets that didn't make it into the game. Like we had line launcher. We had remote battering, which works amazing in VR. It's incredible. Like, yeah, like the first implementation, like right out of the gate, it was like, oh wow, this is comfortable and it works. Like this is wild. We cut it because it was just one of those things where like there wasn't room for it in the game, and we didn't have puzzles for it. And if we were lucky enough to get a sequel, we'd love to explore that one again. But I can hand it over to Peyton. But I think for me, it was again kind of like really starting with Asylum, and it's like, well, what did they think were the essential gadgets, right? And where did they start? And that's as based on that's like what we kind of first looked at. And they didn't have smoke bomb in Asylum, but we wanted to make sure that there was a defensive option in Predator encounters, and we thought that added a lot in City. So yeah, Peyton, what's your memory of all that?
Well, yeah, I think it's two things that were for me personally that I was really pushing for the gadgets that we did have, and actually just have like go deeper with each gadget, and so have fewer but just go deeper. And that's kind of just the kind of design philosophy that I always prescribed to early on. Is like if you go back to Metal Gear, for example, you go up to like the different like the gadget widget, and you're cycling through even from MGS1. It's like you got cigarettes, you got claymore mines, you got the different mines, you got the. To me, it's just too much. And this is my personal preference as a player, as a designer. And I even felt that way as a player playing the Arkham games. Is like sometimes I'm just like, wow, there's almost like too many options, and like this button, this like UI is getting kind of unruly, having to cycle through all these different things. So especially with VR, where we're not going to have like a big weapon wheel or a gadget wheel. I think, yeah, I really want to focus, as Ryan and Darcy said, on like the different slots you've got, make it really simple, and then kind of go deeper with the mechanics as best as we can. And yeah, to his point, I think we obviously looked really closely to Asylum and what was kind of those quintessential gadgets, and then just making sure that those felt as good as possible. Rather than going wide, we wanted to go deep.
The other thing worth calling out is we did consider whether or not matches should have a gadget. And there were talks about that laser pen that he uses to escape from his cell. It was like, is that a gadget that he has forever? Do we design some puzzles around that? And we had a lot of conversations about that, but ultimately, obviously, we didn't land there. I can't remember all the reasoning why, but that was
Yeah, it would have been cool. I was pushing for it, but yeah, that was another thing that we spent so much time on, was trying to figure out how matches gets out of a cell. So many conversations, but I'm happy with where we landed, which is actually really highly inspired by Batman the Animated Series. A couple of elements from that show kind of gave us some of the ideas for how Batman was going to get out of that mess.
That's really cool.
Yeah, to add on to it, I liked how Matches didn't have any gadgets, especially for his boss fight against Bolton. Like, you couldn't use any of your gadgets, it was just straight hand-to-hand combat. It was so satisfying.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
kind
it just got really raw, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, the trailer, like, you guys, yeah, like the boss, it was Batman in the trailer, and we talked about that ability where you hid the surprises because it felt like Batman was gonna fight him, and it was Matches. And then when we were playing at Seattle, I was like, oh, okay, so we're gonna play him as matches, and then as Batman later. And I was like, nope, this just looks like we beat him as matches. So that was really cool. You guys hit a lot of surprises in the trailer. That
I'm glad you described it as cool, because I could understand some people feeling, that we were kind of pulled a fast one on them, right? And very, very from very early on the whole matches reveal, we knew that we didn't want to talk about it before launch. I was so worried about it leaking, and it's very much our MGS2 write-in, but not one for one, because I think one of the big takeaways that most people probably have, although I think public perception of this has definitely changed over time, but especially back in 2001 when Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, and they did the same thing. In the pre-launch trailers, it was all Snake. They didn't reveal Raiden at all. They changed assets for the pre-launch trailers. So we did things like that, including, people have noticed this too. Like before you go to the Bat Pod, where you do the suit up sequence in the trailer, it looks like it's Bruce Wayne doing it, but you're actually we just swapped the model for that shot. But what we didn't want to do when it came to the inspiration for Metal Gear Solid 2 is we didn't want matches to overstay as welcome, which we talked about earlier. And so I think, that was, and we wanted to be a big surprise. So when the game launched prematurely, which was not part of the plan, but that was when the whole matches thing came out, and I was so happy that we were able to hold that whole big reveal up until launch.
Sweet. Yeah, that was.
We're doing all this, and we're going in depth about story and gameplay and everything. It's such a great conversation, but now the review embargo's up, and all these reviews came through. I'm looking at it right now. I think it's about an 83 on Metacritic. Was that a huge sigh of relief for you guys? I know you said, Ryan, that there's still more work to do, and there's lots more features you want to add, and plenty of more bugs to fix. But was that we can sleep? Was that a good moment?
Yeah, definitely a sigh. Oh, absolutely, definitely a huge sigh of relief. You just never know. You never know. And coming out at it, I think we're at 87 on launch day, which was amazing, right? And so additional reviews that come in, and I think the score is going to continue to fluctuate. It'll probably go up, might go down a little bit more, but I think just being in that 80s, I think is a big relief for us. And it's funny because you read, the lowest score we have is for any of these sites is an 8 out of 10. And if you read them, they're mostly really, really glowing. And the thing that gives me a lot of confidence and the team a lot of confidence is, as I mentioned earlier, is that the most common critique of the game, which I think is completely valid, is that it can be, there's bugs. And as with every single update that we're doing to the game, that bug count is getting reduced and the game is becoming smoother to play and even more enjoyable to play. Whether that's going to be reflected in the scores or not is kind of immaterial at this point. I think it's just going to be a better experience for people jumping into the game, especially as we get to the holidays with people unwrapping a Quest 3 or a Quest 3S where the game comes free bundled with the hardware. That's especially once we get toward the end of the year, I think they're going to be able to play a very pristine, pure essence of what we've been building all these years.
That's awesome. Aside from the bug and crash criticisms, were there any notable criticisms outside of that you guys may have noticed just about the game, or not really?
I think I'll actually love to. I'll throw it over to Ryan Darcy to see what he says. But look, I have I'll say two things. One, I think that Clown Puncher's critique of Predator, I think, is really is accurate. There's not much we can do about some of those points that you brought up, Jared, in your review. Because it would probably involve adding more features to the game, extensive features, and trying to change the layout of some of those maps. Maybe we could do a little more. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I think that those are really, really valid. But there's also more micro related bits of feedback that we've been receiving from all different corners of the internet. And as many of you know, I'm extremely active on lots of different channels, and I'm just so you all know, everybody listening and either on the stream or after the fact, when all this gets it's just living there on YouTube, is I screen cap pretty much everything that I think that we could even possibly address, and it goes to the team, and then the team chimes in, and most of the time they're like, "Yep, we could do that." Sometimes they say, I don't even agree because it has these different ramifications that maybe this player isn't thinking about, which is totally valid because they're experts of their feature. And then sometimes it comes down to, okay, we might not have the time and the schedule to be able to do this big thing that the players are asking for. But more often than not, it's going onto a list of tasks that the team is working on over the next few months. I couldn't be more excited about how the game is going to evolve over the next few months, which I'm sorry to keep saying, but like, what developer has that opportunity? The full team dedicated to this game. We're not shifting over to another game. We're not going and building off like a siloed, like a big DLC. We're just focusing on the game that you have, adding more challenge maps, adding more modes, and then just like these micro tweaks to the game, whether it's bug fixes, but also just quality of life improvements. And then those additional story bits that I was hinting as well will make their way into the game.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'll say, like, just to touch on the Clown Punchers critique on Predator is totally valid. I think we're gonna push the needle a little bit here and there. One of the things that we're looking for a patch is a ledge takedown, which we were like struggling to figure out how to implement. And then it kind of just like came to the engineer Cole, who had been working on this. Oh, I think we could do it this way, and then he did it in like a day, and I'm like, oh, nice, that works. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's get that in there. But yeah, I mean, as far as like, you know, critiques about the game, like honestly, like one of the like this game, I think is probably, I think, the best game that I've ever worked on. You know, despite not releasing with, you know, fully clean, no bugs, all that sort of stuff. Like I think, like fundamentally, like what we were trying to do, like we delivered on, and people seem to be liking it, which is super cool, especially for, you know, a medium like VR, where it's like it's still a bit niche. You know, we're still trying to like pull people into the medium. You know, to have an opportunity to push the needle there and make an impact has been really cool. But yeah, it's a lot of like small stuff that I see people commenting on. You know, maybe some of it's related to like, you know, subjective opinions of there should be more of this or less of that. And, you know, I think that it's all valid feedback. But about the end of the day, you know, we had to make decisions about where we're going to focus our time and energy, because there's only so much to go around. Right. So, yeah, I'm very proud of where we landed, and super motivated to, you know, deliver some patches, you know, not only with the bug fixes, but, you know, with new content coming for challenge maps. I think that'll extend the play for sure. Super excited about that. So,
yeah.
Ryan, Darcy, I liked you mentioning, you know, obviously what you're proud of with the game. So I guess I wanted to ask kind of the over-encompassing question of, for you, Ryan Payton, when it comes to story, what are you most proud of? And then for you, Ryan Darcy, when it comes to gameplay, what are you most proud of in terms of just the overall game?
I can start with Peyton's thinking. I mean, for me, it's hands down the combat. I mean, like that's like the opportunity to work on, you know, first person Batman combat. Like that's why I joined Camouflage full time. Like I had been consulting on. I'm not the only reason, but that's like really the thing that like pushed me over the line. Camouflage is a great company, team is great. I was consulting with them on Iron Man VR. And then when we started pitching Batman, I was like, oh man, I got to do this. I've had, I can't remember who I was telling this to, but I'm one of those guys where like if you put me in a room by myself and you ask me to like come up with like interesting ideas, like you're not gonna, like I need other people around. Like I really don't come up with that many good ideas. But like one of the ideas I've had for a very long time was like, oh man, I really want to make a first person melee combat game. I always thought I'd want to try to do it for a flat screen game, but then when we had the opportunity to do it for VR, I was like, oh wait, actually this could be way better for VR. Yeah, combat by far what I'm most proud of, and Troy Johnson, the engineer who worked on that, and you know, just like knocked it out of the park. And Benjamin, the animator that worked on it mostly also as well, had a huge influence on the final quality. And then the other thing I'd say is just the comfort level that we achieved with the amount of action and movement in the game. You know, I think a lot of VR developers have been hesitant to really push the action part in action adventure games, and And I think with some care and smart design choices that you can actually get away with a lot more than you'd expect in VR, and I hope to see more of it in other games for sure.
Yeah, and before Ryan Payne answers, I want to extend off that and say, in a lot of ways, the way that like when Arkham Asylum first came out, now that the combat in that game has kind of been the blueprint for superhero games and for even just a lot of games in general. Like they borrow so much of what made the combat in Arkham Asylum so good. I really wouldn't be surprised if in the years to come, especially for the VR genre, what you guys did with the combat in this game, and maybe even for some flat screen games, you'll see some of those ideas that you guys came up with for Arkham Shadow like implemented, because it really is like a wonder. I to be completely honest and transparent, like when I played Iron Man VR for the first time, I did get that little bit of motion sickness, that little bit of like, whoa, like there's this movement and all. With Arkham Shadow, like I don't know what it is that it all felt so seamless, and I never like felt that bit of motion sickness. I never felt disoriented. I can't speak on like everybody's experience, but I found that was like such a good aspect to the gameplay, and it's something that I can imagine that in those years to come, flat screen games, VR games for sure, like a lot of what you guys did with Arkham Shadow might become that blueprint.
I appreciate that, and I was actually just daydreaming about this like earlier today, like oh man, like I still want to make that flat screen like first person melee combat game one day, and I'd start so much farther ahead, having made this game already. So yeah, so someone might beat me to it, but yeah.
Cool. I guess it's time for me to talk about the thing I'm really proud of when it comes to the story. There's so many things; it's hard to like pinpoint one. But I think just overall, I think for me, the character development of Batman, Bruce, I think is the thing I'm most proud of. The fact that we were able to tell a unique story where we really challenged his values at the start of the game, and then specifically in our game, having him walk in the shoes of a criminal, of somebody in prison, and having to experience that not as a powerful billionaire, right, with all of his gadgets and all of his access to all these different things, and then to have and really utilizing the power, the immersive storytelling power of VR, right, where you are in first person and getting to know Joe in particular, but getting to also know Ben Turner and all these other characters, and it's just I to get on my soapbox just for just a second, but I think that that's just really important as a human, that we all have our biases and we all have our preconceived notions and how we think the world should function and how we think people should behave. And I think an important step in our development as humans and as we become adults and become older is to listen more and to try to understand the person that you're talking to, even if you don't necessarily agree with them, but to empathize with them as best you can. And I think in this game, we forced Bruce through the setup of the game and the prologue to go into the shoes of somebody and kind of be forced to understand them, to the extent that I even think that, I mean, I'm sure players, but maybe even Bruce started to even have some sympathy for Carmine Falcone, who is this pathetic ruler of this pathetic kingdom that he now has within this prison. I think it's hilarious, Yeah. But that whole dynamic between, it's almost like a father-son dynamic between Carmine Falcone and Bruce, I think had an impact on Bruce as a character. And then we have that really, I think, pivotal moment just on the eve of the final chapter, where you're in the Batcave and you need to go talk to Otis Flanagan one more time, and he's in solitary. And Alfred's assuming you're going to go as Batman because that'd be more effective. You don't have to. The whole facade of matches isn't required anymore. Like, matches can just go away at that point. But Bruce says, no, I need to do this as matches. I care about these people, basically. And that was, I think, a really important step in his journey as a character. But I hope it inspired people playing the game in terms of like how they think about other people that they're interacting with them in their lives.
Yeah, the Arkham channel actually had a question. Sorry, there's no chat here, so like he sent me the message on Twitter, but it kind of leads into what you were talking about. Like his question was, did you guys ever plan on exploring the transition from the angry Batman of like Roger Craig's Smith's version to the mature Batman of Kevin Conroy's further into the story? That kind of thing, going from angry to the Batman we see in the Rocksteady trilogy. Was that ever kind of thought about or touched on in a way?
Oh, I mean, I think that's the game.
Right.
When I was exploring the initial ideas for Arkham Shadow along with the team, we all went off and played the other Arkham games just to refresh our memories. And I remember playing Origins right around the beginning of this project, and I was surprised. I forgot how angry and how relentless and how unsympathetic Bruce is as Batman in Origins. And then then you contrast that with when you play in Asylum. And I'm not saying that he's the most empathetic person in Asylum. He actually be quite cruel at times. And you even look at where he gets into Night in terms of how violent he could become, where he's got, an enemy, in Gotham City, and he brings over the Batmobile and he's got the tire right up to the guy's head. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. Like he could get pretty vicious and angry in those later games too. But I felt like he, in those games, you could tell he had more experience and he could see the world a little bit more differently in the way that the one-dimensional way that he was looking at things in Origins. So I felt like as a character, we had to inch him forward in terms of the kind of multi-layeredness and that maturity. And that all started with the inciting incident at the end of our first act, which is the end of our prologue, which happens again with him and Shrike. And I think that's when Batman realized he doesn't really understand these people that he's beating up every day, and he needs to start to understand. And that's again, I think a really important part of your the process of maturation as an adult.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. Because a lot of things like Arkham Knight too. It's like I completely get where like his anger in that feels different than like the raw anger we see in Arkham Origins. Right. Yeah. So I think that was well done in this game. I really do like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question here, but if anyone else has anything they want to add or touch in before I talk about it, was there anything questions you guys want to add on before I move on? Nothing? All right. Well, let's see. So someone wanted to ask about like Easter eggs in the game. I already found like a lot of Easter eggs. I want to say I found a lot of Easter eggs. Arkham games are always littered with Easter eggs. People are asking like, should we maybe expect like a wall Easter egg? Like Arkham Asylum's like big wall that broke. Is there anything huge like that we can probably expect in the game? I already saw some pretty big Easter. I wouldn't say big, but like pretty significant Easter eggs in the game. Is there still things to be discovered that you're sure like we probably haven't found yet, kind of thing? Is there anything you can touch on with that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that people haven't found everything. Let's put it that way.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, I mean, you can't really say much there if I'm being honest. I expect that kind of answer. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from it either. I think that's part of the fun is people finding stuff, and they might actually read into some things that were not meant to be read into. I'll say this because I think it's so inconsequential in the large scheme of things. But look, my personal opinion is that the tiger boat from Arkham Origins, that was not intentional whatsoever, right? That's just an asset from City that they probably forgot to delete, and all good. But the fact that like you guys have touched on it in your videos, and I thought that would be like a really fun thing. So in our transition video from Gotham City into Blackgate, I made sure to slap a tiger logo on that boat because it's just part of the fun. I think of it's like some things. Yeah, these games take a life of their own. And I think that's one of those instances, right? And so sometimes, not everything, you shouldn't do it for everything, but for some of these things that take a life of their own, Officer Bulls, for example, maybe you pull them into the game because it's kind of fun, right? And it creates some excitement within the players.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many, like, just going on that like topic. There's so many small things in this game that I picked up on that just like the crane thing from Arkham Origins where he has like a little like calendar thing like, oh, come here and volunteer. Like I saw that in the elevator of the Beacon Hotel, or the dialogue in the game. Like the audio tapes in this game are very long. The Harvey Crane audio tape is like almost 10 minutes, which I was like, that is really impressive, and like it was just really cool to like hear. That was a very long audio tape. Like, yeah, it's very awesome. And there's like stuff in there that's like, Crane's like, oh, you said you crushed crime in Gotham within a year. That's what he says to Batman in Arkham Knight. So when it comes to like small things in this game, it's like littered in this game. It's not even like Easter eggs, it's just like things that connect back to like a future game in this game's series timeline, and seeing that kind of thing. Just like stuff like I noticed. I'm just like a lot of people probably won't notice it, but like for me, it's really cool to see that. Or how he says "acid throwing bastard" when he becomes Two-Face. Same thing he says.
Thank you for noticing that.
Yeah, so it's really cool
all props go to the team. They have to be on the receiving end of these long presentations and these big decks that I create. Where one in particular I'm thinking about has 70 pages of notes of this game has this reference. Here's a screenshot from this game that I took. Here's this. And I asked them. I don't ask them. I don't demand that they respond to every single thing I put into the game, but I do ask that they take those into consideration. And the team usually just takes it and runs with it, and surprises and delights me in terms of like how they can, integrate those things into the art, to the sound design, to the music, into the dialogue, obviously. And it's not just things from the Arkham franchise. It's actually a lot of people probably never pick up on everything, but a lot of the lines of dialogue are taken from comics or words that characters used in comics or in films, just making sure that we're just infusing the game with as much authentic Batman, not just authentic Arkham, but just authentic Batman as we possibly can. And that's really one of the fun things. And it seems like that's what the Rocksteady guys did, and the WB Montreal team did as well. So if anything, I feel like that comes with the territory if you're going to sign yourself up to make a new Arkham game.
Oh yeah, and it paid off, at least in my opinion. Even seeing stuff from like Blackgate, you see Bronze Tiger, you see the Beacon Hotel from the comics. I mean, when we had like an interview I did with you, like I don't know what it was, like 5 months back, like you like answering those questions in a way like, oh yeah, in the Arkham Origins prequel comics this happened. It's like it's crazy to see like that, like you say one thing, but then when you go into detail like that, it's just like a whole another thing. It's pretty like awesome to see. So it's like, yeah, I like to see that dedication, and it really does show in the game. And I think it shows between people that are actually really into the game's lore. So on that end, it was really well done. Yeah. So I mean,
yeah, not easy though on the team, right, Ryan Darcy? Like yet again, these like requests are coming from me right up until the very end. Like we had this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's so important to make sure that we're doing right by the franchise, and keeping the kind of core fans engaged and excited about everything, and it's just this big balancing act with the other like 5 alarm fires that are going on in the project. And so when you get an email from or Slack message from Peyton saying, hey, can we get this poster in here, it's like, dude, the building's on fire. But
yeah, who cares about the poster, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, everything isn't always on fire, and then you find the time to get the thing in, and it seems like it's paying off with the reaction from y'all and the community. So it's cool.
Yeah.
You reminded me though real quick about the trailers for the game. Those, as you all noticed, were heavily infused with Arkham, authentic Arkham elements, right? Because they were tied to the game. Some of them were more conceptual or abstract than others, like especially our teaser trailer that you guys all, a lot of you guys made videos about and kind of are doing analysis on them. And then some of them were directly from the game, and we took some risks. One thing that we can talk about now openly, and it's the first time I can even say this, is that in that story trailer, it's our second trailer, we showed it off at the at Summer Game Fest in June. It was that big CG trailer. I think it's really beautiful, and the team behind it did a terrific job. They got really excited about having a scene with Gordon getting upset at an inmate in this kind of interrogation room. And the question was like, who is going to be the inmate? And I said, throw the Matches Malone model in there, because I don't think people are going to notice. So we had Matches Malone in the second trailer, and I was nervous about that because I was wondering if people were going to pick up on it. And heck, we put Joe Chill in the third trailer, in the gameplay trailer. He's right there. That is like basically the same character model of Joe Chill from Arkham VR, just aged up. And he's just right there. And like only one person on the internet, as far as I could tell, noticed that. And he messaged me, or he or she messaged me in Twitter, like DM. It's like, hey, I think I know who this is, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I was like, no comment.
That's so funny.
I mean, I think that you were able to get away with it because you had other important characters that we already knew about in those scenes. Like in the matches scene, you obviously have
True.
Gordon going absolutely ham on him, slamming his hands on the desk, kicking it in front of him, and you got Harvey just hiding in the background. So like that's what everybody's eyes are going to go onto. And then
That's right.
with Joe Chill, everybody's focused on the ventriloquist because he's a brand new character, on Harley because she's returning,
got it.
and Crane because he's going to be important way later in the franchise. So you're able to hide them in there because they're just not the focus.
Yeah, they're hiding in plain sight, as you said. It's
Yeah.
like a big like magic trick, basically.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I didn't even like pick up on that, so I'm really glad you guys talked about that. That's pretty sick to think about. Yeah, I mean, if anyone else doesn't have any questions, I mean, I asked everything I wanted to. If there's anything you guys, both Ryans, if you guys wanted to ask or add or touch anything or say anything you want, but I'll leave it to you guys. I've kind of covered what I wanted to cover. Or if any other YouTuber wants to chime in, but
I think I want to just
think
jump
this is
in and
great.
say congratulations. I think you and the team should be really proud. And I mean, just as I think I can speak for a lot of Arkham fans when I say that there were a lot of nerves going into this. Another addition to the Arkham series. I think a lot of people were hoping that it was going to be a good one, and it was. And I think that's got to be a big relief for the team to know that the community has embraced this game the way it did, especially after the reveal where people were very skeptical with it being a VR game and everything. And I think you guys just knocked it out of the park. And I'm really happy that and grateful that we were able to experience this. And I think really grateful too that you guys have been so in touch with the community, not just the YouTubers in the community, but I mean just fans on Twitter, on the Arkham Videos Discord server. I think it's really awesome, and it makes you guys one of the most transparent developers I've ever seen as far as games go. And I think that's a really great trait for you guys to have, and I think it's awesome. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
No, it's
thank you.
yeah.
I was going to say thank
you.
you.
Want to add anything? Yeah.
No. I was just saying thank you. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, it'll mean a lot for the team to watch that and hear it as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think on the subject of thanks, we have so many people and organizations to thank for getting us to this point, because it's not just a camouflage production. It's not just it's not just me running the show, right? We have, and I'm going to go down a list. It's not going to be comprehensive, but kind of going different layers beyond just the core camouflage group, which works so hard on this game. They should be so proud. Is that you've got this Oculus Studios production group that we work with. Mike Dorn and his team of producers have been, so they basically oversee all the different productions across the first party groups within Oculus Studios. Obviously highly involved with Asgard's Wrath 2, all the different titles they have on the horizon are really cool too. They have to kind of shepherd those as well. We have dedicated producers on their front as well, but they're also there in the Discord servers giving feedback or sourcing, issues that people are having, and that's leading directly into these updates we're doing to the game, and they've just been done such a terrific job on the project. You go another layer up, you've got different studios within Oculus Studios that were co-developers on the game this year, right, helping us close out the game from Sinzaru to Downpour. We have a team member from Armature that contributed, and a couple other places that just really just jumped in and helped us as partners, as sister brother studios to us, helped us land the game, which has been which we deeply appreciate. And then you go even wider than that. You've got the different studios that we've worked with, whether it's CodeSync or Bossa or Endeavor One that was a partner with us on Iron Man VR. We've got sub teams of those companies who contributed to the game as well. And then you go even wider than that, and you've got the different organizations, the partners that we've been working with. I think that Warner Brothers Interactive and DC deserve a lot of credit on this game. They were skeptical on day one, as they should be. These guys showing up, they never made an Arkham game before, and they want to do what? They want to do an exclusive new entry to the Arkham game for the MetaQuest. And these guys have never worked on an Arkham game. And then they played Iron Man VR. They're actually, Iron Man VR is pretty good. Maybe they could do this, but could they understand the story? Could they understand the assets? Could they do the combat? So Ryan Darcy and the team produced this amazing prototype that convinced them that we can do combat and a locomotion. And then me and the writing team, we showed up and with like our passion and our storytelling prowess, and thankfully they jumped on board. And once the deal was signed, we were all on the same side. We were all on the same team, and they've just been absolutely amazing partners. They deserve a lot of credit on this project as well. So I know that was a very long answer, but I think I think it's warranted, because I don't want all the credit to go to Camouflage, even though they deserve a lot of credit. It required a lot of people, a lot of organizations to get to this point, and it's not the end of the story. Like I keep saying, like, we're fully dedicated to this project, and I hope we can continue to talk. We will lift the veil on some of these things that we're working on, and that's gonna be really fun to do with you guys. As long as you're interested, let's continue to do videos together, chats together, to kind of like show the community, hey, this might be what the character viewer is going to look like, or hey, this is maybe some of the challenge maps that are coming out, or maybe we could do New Game Plus or a different difficulty mode and things like that. Let's keep doing this, because like, how often do you get to talk about new Arkham content? It was a long drought. Can we just take advantage of this opportunity? It's too much fun. Like, let's do this at least for a few months, okay?
Yeah. No, like, is the sky blue? Like, of course we want to keep talking about it, that kind of thing. So, it's really exciting to hear that the game's still going to be supported, because when we talked about this like 5 months ago, that was something that I asked, like, is there going to be DLC or this or that in the game? And you were like, it sounded like a no, but now it's like, now I'm excited for these new challenge maps or this or that. So, it's really cool. Like, it's really cool. Still months of the content, and this game, like, Clown Puncher, I saw your review reach like, I just want more. And I'm like, yes, I want more. I think having like an infinite challenge map, infinite predator sections, things like that, just to keep playing and playing is great. So yeah, and it speaks testament to Ryan, Darcy, and just the combat and the gameplay there. And then the writing of the game was really well done on your guys' part too. Like, this game turned out really well, and obviously people are gonna be skeptical because, you know, new things bring skepticism, and but you guys delivered, and I could safely say for the majority, like, they really enjoyed the game. And, you know, you can't please everybody, but for the majority, everyone here, we're really happy to be a part of it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also wanted to say a big thanks to you guys for the game you delivered, but also for bringing us in, for being so involved in this community, being so involved in the creators and the people who have loved and have talked about Batman Arkham for however many years. I thought that's amazing. I've been doing YouTube for, oh boy, 12 years now. And one of the first games I talked about on my channel was Batman Arkham Origins. And it's in my 12 years of doing this, I have never seen someone in the games industry who has been this involved, who has like wanted to be so hands-on, who is like constantly asking for feedback from whether it's like myself or any of the people here on this panel, and even some of the creators who aren't here right now. And I just think that that's so awesome. And I also just, as another aside, seeing like my name and seeing everyone here, like your names in the credits for this game, to see like that in like some way we've been like immortalized as a part of Batman Arkham and its history in video games is like that legit, like it almost made me cry just to think about it. It's one of the craziest things. Like, I know what we did is probably like nothing compared to the amount of work that you guys have been putting in for however many years in the development of this game, but it is really something special to me that I will hold near and dear to have had even just a small part in the making of this game.
Well, I'm glad we could do it, and it's well deserved. And it's not just because you guys came in and played an earlier version of it and had to suffer through some of those bugs, and I appreciate your guys' patience, but the feedback you gave, as you noticed, we were changing things in real time based on your feedback, so you deserve a credit. But even if you didn't do that, I still think you guys all deserved a credit in the game, because it was me for years watching, and team members too, watching your guys' videos, taking notes, sending time codes back and forth, like, well, they said this, and like, oh, this thing is important to them, and they kept saying, no Arkham game should ever do this again, so let's not do this ever again. It's just, it was educational, so we benefited so much. But also, it was proof positive to the theory that I had and others had, Mike Doran and others at Oculus Studios, when we approached Warner Brothers about this, is that this is still a vibrant community. Maybe a new game in the Arkham franchise a dedicated Arkham game hasn't come out for 7 or 8 years. but there's still a big community out there that cares. And this is an opportunity to do something, maybe not what they're expecting, as we found out on May 1st, how people reacted, but you saw that there was a feeling, there was an emotion, there was a care. People care about this franchise, and because in a lot of ways, you guys are torchbearers. You guys are holding this community and moving it forward. And you're coming up with new videos about games that came out 15 years ago.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The community is still like very large. Like even outside of us YouTubers, if we didn't exist on YouTube, like you just see like all these Batman videos just get more viewership than some other things, or the Reddit's really big and all these memes about the thing. There's just so much about Arkham. So
our channels existed because the community existed, right? Like for myself, the reason I started making videos about the games is because I saw there were so many people who were as interested, and that's just never changed. Over the 12 years since when I covered Arkham Origins, and further beyond that, when Arkham Asylum first came out in 2009, you could see, like, of course, there's tons of Batman fans. That's always been a thing, but there is just this very specific like Batman Arkham fans, which has been such a constant for the last 15 years and is carried over now into the release of this game, which is so special.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to add on, I'm looking at the comments right now. People are agreeing these games are timeless. There is a huge fan base for this, as it should. This is a great game series, and one of the people we gotta thank is Batman Arkham Videos. Like one of the comments are saying, he was responsible for like 90% of all the Riddler trophies you have to collect. Like much.
Yeah, man.
No doubt.
We're all waiting.
A lot of credit.
We're all waiting for his Easter egg video.
Yes.
We talk about Easter eggs. We're all waiting for his Easter egg video.
My friends the other night told me, after I told them I already 100% the game, that, oh, you gotta get on it, do a collectibles video. And like, no, that is somebody else's job. I am not going to interfere on his territory.
Exactly.
And it'll be perfect. It'll be perfect.
What? Oh,
when Batman Arkham Videos does this collectibles video, whenever that is, it'll be perfect. And also just the changes that we're going to continue. I feel a little guilty because he's got his process, right? These new games come out, he does a video that analyzes everything and kind of like documents it in a way. But we're gonna be changing stuff. So I don't know how he's gonna react to that, but we'll find out when we get there.
Awesome. Well, if no one else has anything to say, I think this might be a good time to wrap it up, and definitely won't be the end. I mean, I want to keep talking about these changes you guys add to the game. And
I do have one more thing to ask about. Sorry.
No.
So it's during Falcone's boss fight, I heard a very particular line of dialogue that just stood out to me. So just completely randomly, I don't think it has any consistency. Falcone will just say, "Go punch a clown, Bat Freak." I don't know if that's intentional or not. I honestly doubt that it is, but it stood out to me.
Let's just say, wow, I did not expect to talk about this, but your name was constantly thrown around in story meetings, and we were terrified of you because you were very critical. You were very critical, but you're not wrong about things, but you're just very honest, right? And we're like, what is he going to say about this? What is he going to say about this? Like, is he even going to like our video game? And it was just this thing that we talked about quite a bit. It was, it's like, and we, because I would talk about you all the time because you like one of my favorite videos, and I know you partner with somebody in the community on it, was your iceberg videos.
Yes.
And we would frequently refer to those things. And to the point where people are like, Ryan, can you stop talking about Clown Puncher? Because and then other moments were like, is he even going to like this video game? So, let's leave it at that. But like you and others in the community had you had, like, you didn't know it, but you had a seat at the table in so much of what we did in this game, and we deeply appreciate what you've done and everybody else in this call and Batman Arkham Videos and so many other folks, Adam Smith, and so many other great contributors. Yeah, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Rocksteady and Warner Brothers and Warner Brothers Montreal. We just have so many people to thank for helping us get to this point. And yeah, we're looking forward to not ending the journey on October 22nd or October 21st, which ended up being not completely unintentional. But yeah, the journey's not over. We've got a number of months left on the project, and hope we can make it just as good as we possibly can before we have to move on to our next thing.
That is fantastic.
Thank you very much. That is frankly an honor to hear you say that.
Oh yeah,
your entire team is incredible.
Well, thank you.
100%. Any last thoughts, concerns, anything like that before we probably wrap it up here? I think we all got everything off our chest, I'd say. All right, great. So
yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks for organizing.
Guys. Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys talking and giving us a little bit more of the game and what to expect. So yeah, we'll cut the stream here. Thank you everyone that joined, and hopefully I got to answer most of the questions asked. And yeah, just stay tuned for more Batman Arkham Shadow because it's not over yet. Far from over, actually. So yeah, thank you guys again. And
all right, talk soon.